So here's the pitch, okay? We've all seen Miss Swifts. It's that outtake show, and it was running it in. I saw chat spamming when I told Jordan to focus. So we're gonna run with that. Strike while the iron is hot. Jordan sitting at his desk at the video team section. I don't know what they do. I don't care what they do. But for the premise of this video, cannot be focused. Watching anime butts on one screen. I don't care what he's doing. Just can't be working. All right. And then he hears Miss Swifts. Big TV right behind him. Miss Swifts playing. Here's the line. Says Jordan, focus. Okay. And then his eyes go wide. He turns around, turns off the TV. He's trying to get rid of me. He knows he's not focused, but he knows he needs to be. But goes back to his desk, goes back to doing whatever he's doing. But he has to focus. So I'm at his window. Boom, slam on the window. I'm like the Babadook, okay? He doesn't know where I'm coming from. I slam the window, piece of paper, says focus. He does a little bit. He focuses a little bit. He doesn't turn off the anime butts. No. He flips his hat around, Ash Ketchum style. I don't know. And then he goes back to doing anything he wants, but not focusing. That's not enough for me. That's not enough for hi-rez. It's not enough for what we stand for. So I appear behind the wall behind him, okay? Boom, Mifflin, up there. I tell him to tighten up. He needs to focus. He does a little bit more. He focuses a little bit, but not enough, okay? And then it's not enough for me. It's not enough for me, okay? We have to go even further beyond that, all right? He does eventually close the screen, but that's not enough. I'm still appearing. I'm appearing everywhere. I'm in the bathroom. I'm in his cereal. I'm in his snacks. I'm telling him to focus, and eventually he switches desks. I'm under his desk, okay? I'm telling him to focus there, and that's where it happens. He sits in a maxonomic chair, his eyes dilate, and he finally finds his focus.
Okay. Approved.
I sold it? I sold it! Yes! I'm gonna sell so many chairs.
Jordan, what the was that? We just lived a fever dream. I have no idea what just happened, and we approved it.
What kind of anime butts we talking? What kind of anime butts we talking?
Well, hello and welcome back to the SPL as we get ready to dive into set number 2. Give a shout out to our chair sponsor, Maxonomic, where you can go to needforseat.com and use code SMITEMAX to get yourself a discount on that SMITE Maxonomic chair so you can tighten up and focus up. You're going to want to focus up because we've got a big set coming up here. The Olympus Bolts and the Oni Warriors are going to be our second match of the day here in week number 1 of Phase 3. J-Mac, and I can't do this by myself. I got Mifflin here, the chairman himself, here to help me out with this.
That's Dave. That's not me. I was just filling in. He was out that week.
Oh, he was out that week for that. Also, one thing I never really noticed, something you said close. I've never heard close the screen. I've heard turn the screen off or like close the window, but not close the screen.
Well, so like, I mean, if you want to, okay, so here's the thing about how I did that line before we recorded that. Jordan actually uses a laptop, so I was assuming he was going to close his laptop.
Okay, I got you. That makes sense.
It's whatever, bro.
Okay,
whatever.
No, it makes sense.
Creative
It's a good justification for it. Let's take a look at the schedule. If you missed in the action today, or you want to see anything that may be coming up for the rest of the week, we had the Jade Dragons in their first match get a swift 2-0 over the Valhalla Valkyries. And now we got the Olympus Bolts and the Oni Warriors for our second and final match of the day to open up our weekend here in phase number 3. We can't really talk about these two teams without really diving in kind of towards these supports, specifically over towards the Warriors, talking about Neil Ma, kind of his wide range of the support picks for it. He's kind of unlike some of the other supports amongst the league. You know, typically it's more of the top tiers, the Fafnirs, the Emojis are kind of thing, but Neil kind of does it a little bit differently, Mifflin.
Yeah, he'll go towards the Capris before everyone else is, the Kuzan Bows, the Bacchuses, the things along those lines. He likes to play this aggressive style. Worth noting, by the way, that this is our current World's MVP, Neil Ma, for this squad, and he's looking to step it up here in Phase 3 of Season 8. Has not had a great performance as of yet, holistically as a team inside of this season, but never too late to start cleaning it up. I'm expecting great things from this team. I mean, even in recent weeks, it felt like they were starting to figure out what it is exactly that they want to do, and the reason he got MVP was his shot calling ability. So having that kind of leader on your team to help you tighten up, to help you focus towards the end of the year should be pretty nice.
And not just the shot calling, that mental fortitude that's kind of been so heavily bragged about for this man, is he's been able to, even despite being down 2-0, he's made multiple reverse sweeps back with the help of his team with him. Being able to have someone as your forefront, as your pillar, being able to make that kind of bounce back, being able to say, guys, we're not out of it yet, and then what do? Turn around and get some kinds of big reverse sweeps for it, able to save games. It's going to be a big matchup here for Neil, especially going up against this Olympus Bolts. But let's talk a little bit to Neil Mont, see kind of how he's doing as we get ready to go here into Phase 3. Neil, first off, Welcome to Phase 3 of the SPL. It's good to see you and going through. With this new phase, what kind of new expectations might we see here out of your team this time?
I mean, it's Phase 3. It's time to turn on the Jets, trying to get serious, time to buckle down and qualify for Worlds, you know? So, I mean, everything this year has just been going upwards on an upwards trajectory, and I think we're pretty happy with our progress. And when everyone finally gets here to North America, I think it's going to be great things from us. So this phase is just time to kind of meet expectations a bit more than we have in the first two phases and just kind of buckle down, yeah.
Yeah, and as we are in Phase 3, and this is the World's Run forward, what kind of changes have you guys been making to kind of get prepped for this World's Run?
Well, Liam, aka Vote, has really been cracking the whip. That guy's he's just an absolute ringleader, you know. He's getting serious. Anytime anyone makes even the smallest mistake, he's in their ear yelling at them in Scottish. No one knows what he's saying, but it does not sound good. Nika's scared. I'm scared. Fred's scared. Dardes has never been scared in his life, but I mean, he's turning this team around single-handedly. We love that guy.
Just imagine if maybe the Unity team could hear him yell. Maybe that would scare them and kind of make it a little bit easier for you. But
wouldn't be fair.
With this new bonus patch up here, we did see a little bit of a nerf towards the support role, specifically with that Umoja. How does the change to Umoja maybe affect some of the picks and bans?
I don't know. I feel like it probably won't affect it too much, to be honest. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, everything hasn't been changed yet either. Like next Tuesday, the patch is going to change a lot, so maybe that'll change it. But in my mind, she's more or less the same character, right? Like a cooldown nerf hurts quality of life, but at the end of the day, I mean, when that ultimate is up and you press 4, it's still going to be the same ult, right? So I think she'll still be a really strong pick, but we'll have to wait and see.
Well, Neil, thank you so much for sitting down and talking with me. Best of luck in your set today.
Thank you.
Well, we'll see if maybe some of those change-ups come through here. I like the point he made through his Vote's kind of cracking that whip, getting a little terrifying out of the dual lane. And we saw a little bit of that spark in the playoffs. That second game specifically, Vote really turned up in the early stages of the game. Maybe we see some big plays come out of here in this game.
Yeah, I mean, just a small little history lesson for you guys. It used to be Vote NBK. That stands for Natural Born Killer. So if that guy's yelling at me, I'm probably doing whatever he says. Even if I disagree, and that's kind of how Smite's played at its best. You always follow the call, so good to see that the Oni Warriors are in high spirits.
They got a stacked dual lane to go up against between Barracuda and more specifically Awesome Jake, who has a very well-rounded god pool. I mean, this is a player who, when he joined the Pro League, everybody went, this is the tier-ranked player. Everybody knows who that guy was, and nobody really had super high expectations for him, but over the course of these 2 years of play, he has really become one of the stars of this Bolts team.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting kind of matchup here between the supports, because I would say that these two supports are as close to foils as you could have. Neilma is that consistent leadership for your team, this veteran player, and then Awesome Jake is kind of like this young man coming into the league, got mechanical prowess, playing some weird aggressive picks, and I'm not 100% sure what the internals of the Olympus Bolts are like, but if I had to assume, it probably isn't Awesome Jake 408 being the priority shot caller. If I had to guess who it is, it's probably Barracuda, considering how long he's been playing the game. But I think that it just makes for a very interesting matchup. Two very different styles, and we brought up the fact that maybe this is the only similarity between these two guys. They both have very unorthodox god pools, so we could see like a Bacchus versus Tyr support matchup or something crazy like that.
Don't even get my hopes up with the fact that we could potentially see Bacchus Tyr, because now I want to see it after the crazy picks that we had in set number 1. You never know what's going to happen here in this third phase of play. You never know what's going to happen between these two teams. I'm very curious to see where everything is going to fall in place as these picks and bans start lining out for these two teams. I mean, we talked a lot about the support, but there's still the mid lane selection between them, and between both these mid laners. They've got a wide range of gods. We've been seeing Tiamat be the heavy ban priority, and almost immediately Raijin has always kind of been that answer back.
Yeah, I mean, the mid lane matchups right now, or the mid priority pool, is so interesting because it has been shifting a lot. I mean, there was a couple of weeks where it was Morgan Le Fay in that second tier. Persephone kind of rears her head when she became available again, and then kind of falls off the face of the planet the week after that. So I think it's going to be really fun to see how these guys try to allocate their picks.
Let's see how things shake up in picks and bans for game number 1. The Olympus Bolts and the Oni Warriors here in week number 1. We saw a lot of Artemis priority in the first set, making sure to take that god away. Umoja was let through a few times. Tiamat and Cerberus were also high priority bans. You expect to see a lot of the same here in this second set.
I mean, I think Neilma, when he answered your question about Umoja in particular, kind of spoke volumes to the meta at large right now off of the 8.8 balance patch. I don't think we're going to see too many broad sweeping changes to God priorities. I mean, Raijen's still good, Tiamat's still good, even though Yamoja got changed. He said it perfectly. Her ultimate still is just a phenomenal wall. So I'm expecting a lot of similarities as pre-playoffs or even playoff play between these two teams. Maybe they're holding on to a couple of strategies, or maybe they got their eyes towards 8.9 and want to use this first week to practice some things they think are going to level up as the meta changes. But as of right now, I'm expecting largely standard bans and picks.
We saw a lot of similarities for Hunter builds as well. Those haven't seemed to have changed much, even despite the bonus patch coming through. Still seeing the Iqbal Odysseus bow kind of start out, and then it kind of depends on where you want to go. If you want to go with Rage and then a Dominance, we saw a Rage Wind Demon previously from Panicat in that Don Zaburo game. But as the first picks are coming through, some priority already set towards Neomod with the Khepri band away and the Odin from the Olympus Bolts. Meanwhile, the Oni Warriors, they're going to take the Artio and the Emojo away. The Artio has just become a menace in Solon. I think that's the safest way to say it, is this Guardian is just a menace.
Yeah, both teams putting a lot of emphasis towards the frontliners in their bands. Serket going to be the third overall from the Olympus Bolts, and probably a ban towards the support. The Oni Warriors jungler has been known to play Serket in the past, so it could be towards him as well. But as it stands right now, generally just that front line takes a pretty massive hit, but a lot of notable gods for each of these individual players. God pools are still available. When I think of the Olympus Bolts, I think of Ymir still to this day for Awesome Jake, and that's still a priority that is available here. But instead, Osiris locked in first overall. When you've got this much frontline removed from the table, why not just take what's left? And Osiris seems to be the premier.
Yeah, it feels like those cooldown adjustments that came to him in this patch haven't slowed him down any. We saw 2 strong games out of Sanford Soccer last time around, and we'll see it here for the Olympus Bowl. Still some flexibility with it, but with the Hell as the final ban for the Oni Warriors, that leaves the Cerberus open for them to grab almost immediately. Still some potential for this to go either way, whether this goes for support or for solo, though we have been seeing it much more often in the solo lane.
Man, that god is just so good. Not only is he a good tool to have regardless of what the enemy composition is, he's such a plug-and-play character, he also kind of operates as a deterrent. He's saying, all right, I locked in Cerberus in my first slot. Olympus Bolts, if you guys were planning to play a healer, maybe you shift up that plan now. Like, maybe just don't do it because I'm going to be stealing the majority of that healing. So I like having Cerberus prioritize this highly, and as you already highlighted, does have some of that flex potential into either support or the soul lane. Going to keep the Bolts guessing and maybe put some pressure on this next phase of picks for them. If they think it's going to be support, they might try and prioritize their own pick for Awesome Jake so it doesn't get banned out in this next phase. If they think it's solo, could do the exact same thing, but for Haddix this time around, Erlang Shen going to be the second lock-in for the Oni Warriors, and I'd say that the Warriors have done a great job shoring up their front line, but take a peek at those meta picks still available to the Bolts.
It seems that Erlang Shen is kind of the new slotted in Gilgamesh for these teams. We didn't see him kind of prioritized at all earlier on, and now he's still not even really being looked at. Osiris and Erlang Shen for these junglers is maybe those hits to Gilgamesh maybe do kind of put him a little bit lower in those priorities. But as far as priority picks go, as you mentioned, the Artemis still available. Sobek, now we're seeing him for the second time today, has a 0% win rate, but that's only off of 1 game, so nothing too bad for it. It has that potential to go solo, as we saw it from Ducky. Can still be played support as well if Jake would like to grab it.
But it's such a lethal duo lane if it is Sobek and Artemis together.
It's the
I mean,
classic.
Pluck into Transgressor's Fate is just good. I mean, you're just going to get locked down forever. You can tail whip off the tail end of Transgressor's Fate and just extend that CC even further out of control. Kind of wild to me that the Oni Warriors are going towards the Rama in their Hunter selection as well. I mean, he is the god of, all right, I'm in trouble, let me press 4 and head up into the air, but now when he lands, he's going to land into a trap and be stuck there and take additional damage from Artemis thanks to her passive, giving her, I believe, 10 to 15% additional damage to anyone affected by CC. Rom essentially is not allowed to use that ultimate as long as Artemis is within range. This is a very aggressive composition immediately from the Oni Warriors, though. I mean, Erlang Shen should be able to set the pace in the early game. Cerberus going to be trying to do the exact same thing out of the solo or support, depending on where they decide to flex him. And then Rom's there to finish off any kills they're able to straggle out of the reach of these two frontliners. Whereas the Olympus Bolts, they've got a standard Sobek that could flex in either a soul lane and just be a steadfast wall that shouldn't fall behind, or head over into support and act as that kill lane with this Artemis. And then you've got an Osiris to act as that bridge into the late game to make sure that this Artemis, once given that 6-item slot potential, is just shredding through anybody on the other side.
Speaking of a steadfast wall, one of them banned away. Kabrakin taken off the board, who's been making a more recent rise. It feels like he was kind of briefly touched upon during week 8 of Phase 2. Then playoffs, we saw a lot of ban priority towards him and a lot of pick priority as well, especially with the Jade Dragons. It seemed to be a pick that they really like to go towards. And Tiamat as the second ban here for the Oni Warriors. And then an Aphrodite ban here in this game. We saw it picked last time, but an Aphrodite ban in Phase 2 here, Mifflin? A little curious.
I mean, against the Oni Warriors makes sense to me,
Okay,
right? That's one of
okay.
their favorite picks,
That's
as
fair.
is the Hera. I mean, these are just a couple of comfort picks that the Warriors have gone to in the past, and the Olympus Bolts say, hey, you're the only team that's really playing these guys. I don't want to deal with it. I mean, I don't get a ton of practice against it. You haven't picked it in your first 3. Might as well just remove that option from the table. But speaking of comfort picks and a little bit out of left field picks, Kuzenbo, selected for the Oni Warriors, can only assume that's headed to Neil Ma, which means this Cerberus is slated for the solo lane. The Oni Warriors have a very scary front line.
And this is looking just like a classic Warriors draft. They're grabbing everything that they want, kind of premier picks for each of these players. And the Kuzenbo, pretty much the only one playing it is Neil Ma. So trying to ban really anything but the Kuzenbo is just throwing Sage out there saying, hey, we just don't want to play against this god specifically, but they let him get the Kuzenbo, and in response, the Olympus Bolts are able to get an 8th pick Terra, who was previously in Phase 2 kind of a top 3 ban out of everything, but has now been kind of squeaking by a little bit more as these drafts go on and as we approach this 3rd phase. And with a Giannis as a final selection here, how are you liking this Bolts roster?
It's strong. It's high execution, to be sure. I mean, outside of the Terra, who's got the press 4 win team fight button, but outside of that, Artemis being single target and having a lacking mobility means that it's going to be very easy to jump on her. Giannis is very dependent on your ability to land through space and time at ranges, and I trust Ven to be able to do that, but you cannot consistently rely on that. But the Terra lock-in is incredibly interesting for this Olympus Bolts draft, because what does that mean for the support solo lineup? I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you where these gods are going to land. If I was Taco, I might say it's Terra inside the jungle with Osiris solo. If I'm aggro, I might be saying it's Sobek support, Terra solo. If I'm Mifflin, I'm telling you I don't know, because I legitimately don't know. And if we don't know on the desk, that likely means that the Oni Warriors probably don't know on the play on field either. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it pans out. There is a ton of flex potential here with the Bolts draft.
And that's comparing to the Oni Warriors, where you know where these gods are going. After that Kuzenbo gets locked in, you know where all 5 of these gods are going. There's no chance that we see anything kind of wild or out there. I say that, but it is SMITE. You never know where everything will eventually fall into place. But with this Morrigan as a 10th pick here, Oni Warriors draft, what is kind of their win con here going into this first game?
It's aggression. Their win con is Erlang Shen popping off, and the rest of the boys able to use that momentum to control neutral objectives inside of the early game. And I think it's a good draft for that style of play. The only thing that I am concerned about for the Warriors is the Morrigan. She's got a lot of dive coming her way between Sobek, Terra, even Giannis able to close gap. They're going to have to play very careful in the early.
Well, how will the sparks fly in our second set of the day? Let's take it over to Dulcin and Gormizer to bring us the action of this Bolts and Warriors game.
The debut of phase number 3 for the Olympus Bolts and the Oni Warriors. Dulcin, Gormizer, and Doug will be bringing you Game 1, Game 2, and potentially Game 3. And Gore, if you're talking about a potential Game 3, you would assume that the onus lies on the Oni Warriors to step up big, an underdog maybe in their first matchup here in Phase 3.
Yeah, and in a weird, parallel universe, this would have been a matchup that we could have seen in the Phase 2 playoffs. I mean, if they had been able to topple the Leviathans, it would have been absolutely the matchup for them. So you have to imagine, in my mindset, that the Bolts have at least some homework done on the Warriors. I'm assuming a nice little break, you get a week off.
Yeah.
Their unfortunate departure from the Phase 2 playoffs, they're coming back. Maybe with a vengeance. This is a composition that screams it wants vengeance. I'm actually really excited as well to see this Sobek solo, Haddix, being able to play a lot more setup this game than what we are typically seeing, although not as heavy carry as what we've seen out of him in the past.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. And this is something that Ducky hinted at in our interview earlier, as Dardes is low here. Lasbro was getting close. Something that Ducky hinted at in the interview earlier is with the mask changes, it tends to be the starter item over in the solo lane. The bonus balance changed those numbers a little bit. He said, look, it's Guardian plus Vamp Shroud. That's what solo lane feels like right now. We still saw Fighter Mask once or twice in our first set of the day, but double Guardian, double Vamp Shroud. No surprise there. As you pointed out, Sobek on one side, then Cerberus on the other. Jungle's going to be fun to follow along with here as well, Gore. Osiris has been a mainstay throughout the second portion of Season 8. Erlang Shen has been in that conversation as well, especially with mannequins. This is a matchup I think we're pretty used to at this point.
And I would say it's one of those things, Osiris almost overvalued, I think, depending on whose hands he were playing him during the Phase 2 playoffs. He only won 2 of his 12 games. And
really?
So, did not do very, very well. But I do think that he still has a lot of merits to it, and I think that's why we see Osiris come back.
Cubo Fred is here. Awesome Jake will get the stun onto Neilma. Pin onto Jake, but he was dashing right as it connected. And that'll get Awesome Jake out of danger. Normally it's Lasbra in a game with the Olympus Bolts that's finding these level 2 ganks, but Cubo Fred getting a little aggressive early, and that's what you want to see right out of this Erlang Shen. Mannequins plus Pin. Opportunity for a first blood.
That's almost all you need half
Right.
the time. Is just as long as your pin is available, you're going to be able to get good lockdown. Try to force Relics out of Barra. Unfortunately, he was just far enough away that it doesn't happen this time. But that's without 9 turns blessing. That's no taunt, no real abilities. It was level 2 when he did it. And so now Cubo, I think, is going to be able to start putting a little more presence on the map. And you have to imagine it's only going to be in mid and duo because there's a Guardian over there in solo. It's not much you can do.
Yeah, as that leveling increases in the solo lane with the way Guardians work, harder to kill them without serious damage being put behind it. I think we've talked about Cubo Fred for the right reasons on this Erlang Shen. Lasbra on Osiris feels pretty comfortable though as well, right? I don't know if you know the Osiris win right off the top of your head, but I have to imagine Lasbra plus Osiris, at least through Phase 2, probably has a pretty decent look at it. Who knows if it's win or loss, but it feels like some of these picks, specifically for Lasbra, have synergized so well with his playstyle, the ability to jump in and facilitate. Please tell me I'm right, or else
you are so overwhelmingly right. 11,
oh yeah, baby!
11 of the 13 Osiris games they played, Lasbra was able to win with.
And I never doubted it for a second.
Yeah, no, that is obnoxious in my mind, though. I mean, we've seen like a couple of times this year for like individual phases, we have seen. Like some teams, I get like a 100% win rate on a god for a certain distance. I think Haddox had it on King Arthur for a little while. Obviously, the Bolts had such a magnificent start to Phase 2 that a lot of their stats were winning. But to have something so close to 100% win rate on a god, is, in my eyes, is just so difficult. I mean, you have to win every single game, and on someone that's such a high pick. I think it showcases not only what Lasbra's style preference is and the way that he's been playing this year, but also maybe showcases where their priorities have been, specifically in getting this pick for Lasbra. I mean, Phase 1, we're talking Circuit. That's like the lock-in for them. I think this has been a good shift for Lasbra.
Right.
And, I mean, so far, with no first blood still on the board, I think he's just really, really divvied up to have a successful game. He's been farming. I think he's a little bit ahead in experience overall than we see from Cubo. Not by too much, but enough that it's, taking level 6 just ahead of time.
Right. And this is, it will be interesting moving into next week, right? Because that's when 8.9 will hit. And so Mifflin is predicting, as well as the rest of us, that there will be some jungle shifts happening there. Was it 8.9 that you wooed about, or
no.
You have another exciting stat to drop on me here?
So what did I just say? 11 out of 13? Yeah. That was just Phase 2. 14 out of 16 for the whole year.
And see, here, I was very nervous at first. I was like, yeah, Lasbra and Osiris just feels really good, doesn't it? And then you started, like, cackling, and I was like, oh, man, I could be way wrong here. They've barely won, and I'm just totally wrong. But for good reason I'm feeling that way. That's because Lasbra overwhelmingly positive win rate on this Osiris. Just a moment ago, Neilma dashed on into the mid lane, burned the ultimate, out of Venenu. Went golden, could have been the beads, but it was the ultimate instead. And so Neilma unsuccessful in the gank, unless you count getting that ultimate down in time. How about this, though, from the solo laners here, Gore? Vamp Shroud, both of them into Voidstone. It's no secret that Cerberus can do pretty decent damage, building kind of defensive. You get a little power in that build as well. But maybe Solo Beck. I wasn't wrong. I don't know why I second-guessed myself. Maybe Solo Beck is in a similar point with damage.
Yeah, I mean, can get... Solo Sobek can get decent damage out of there. In fact, honestly, I think he's really good. Like, that knock-up does a surprising amount when you're not expecting it. And so I think it opens up that conversation, but It's not as much as I'm expecting out of the Cerberus early on, so I think there's a little bit, at least in the lane matchup, that leans towards Nika. But I will say, when it comes down to the fights, the middle of a team fight, all of a sudden Lurking in the Waters is going to hit a little harder. You are getting hit with this small but still present anti-heal on his 3. It's just enough burst. Like, there's all these tiny little sources of damage that will stack up with him, and his cooldowns are just in the right spot that you're going to feel it a few times through the duration of the fight.
Man, there's so many cool matchups in this specific game. Not only both of the solo lane Guardians having similar tug-of-war style abilities in the team fight, Lasbra and Cubo Fred on the junglers. How about the mid lane? Both of them playmaking potential. Whether you talk about Giannis and through space and time and the portals and the ability for Venenu to impact the fights, and then Dardes as well on the Morgan, the transformation targets abound for him as Vote has to lose those beads. You look across the mid lane here, Gore, there's a lot of potential. How about this, though? It's just Neoma on Venenu, who will walk away. Venenu holds onto those beads, though, but Neil not making his life easy.
I think showcasing, I mean, we've seen one relic burned so far this game, and it was those beads just now burned from Vote. We've seen a little bit of aggression. In fact, now the collapse onto the duo.
Barracuda drops the boar. 1 stun, 2 stun, 3 stun. Barracuda walks on out. Oh, but the stun on the other end will keep Barracuda in place. We're going tower diving, baby. Cubo Fred wants Barra, and Cubo Fred wants first blood. They spent everything the Oni Warriors did, and they get paid for it. Barracuda falls for first blood.
Oh, but that's going to be the aggression. Jake's going in. They've got Lasbra and Vin.
Venenu is here as well. Lasbra could jump on in. Neoma maybe the only target here, and it's the target that's locked down. But now we're pushing back the other way. The Olympus Bolts in a 4v3 turn tail and try to head on out. Lasbra will leap away. And the Oni Warriors nearly caught the Olympus Bolts off guard there with that sudden turn. And so when all the dust settles, first blood of the Oni Warriors, a couple ultimates burnt, some actives burnt as well.
I mean, if you had maybe one more of your ults up and as the Warriors, you might actually get another kill there and have a very happy turnaround on the Bolts. But I will say, I liked the way they used them overall. I didn't see what Dardes transformed into. I know Vote went for the snipes, and Cuvo did technically miss the taunt. I'm sorry, Cuvo. We saw it. You missed the taunt.
Yep.
Good news is, the healing is
not
really dependent on whether or not you hit the taunt. So he had the heal while going for the tower dive, which helped him stay alive and really helped make sure that nothing bad could happen for the Oni Warriors there. I mean, worst case scenario is you don't get a kill, but they committed so heavily to it that they were going to be walking away with something at the bare minimum. They get it onto their jungler. Cuvo's just slightly behind because he spent a little more time looking for the ganks so far than what we've seen out of Lasbra, but having that first blood bounty, that little bit of extra gold, really should help kickstart him. I think we're going to start seeing him a little bit more.
So good news for the Oni Warriors, you get first blood, a little bonus onto Cubo Fred. Bad news aside from the fact that Lasbra is still feeling comfortable to invade. But good news for the Olympus Bolts is that they're still just a bit of gold ahead, just a bit of experience ahead, so the kind of neutral farming has been there for the Olympus Bolts while that first blood was not. And so the Olympus Bolts, you get a little lopsided there in the duo lane, but Barracuda, I kind of want to follow along with not only Barra, but how some of these Hunter builds go. My goodness, that's a lot of damage. Dardes is found. Barra transforms into the Terra. As through space and time, flies on in. That'll force Dardes to dash away. That's a great 1-2 punch there. And that's the threat of the Morrigan, isn't it, Gore, outside of the transformation, the ability to stealth in and catch Barracuda off guard.
And not only catching him off guard, but just putting the setup there, and kind of the perfect bait. Barra is in this awkward spot. Now there are snipes raining down on him. You're doing so much damage to Dardes, you can possibly get the kill. I'm actually really impressed that Dardes switched to the Terra, of all things, because I was thinking there was no way he was going to make a transformation and get out of there. But he gets the Guardian online, gets the not only the stun, but specifically the double dash to get on out of there.
2-level lead, though, for Venenu in the mid lane. That's where my eyes go, despite Dardes making the play. Some opportunity for the Olympus Bolts to get a kill on board, and this one is clean. You dive in, you catch Cubo Fred off guard. But how about this from Neoma? The dash over the wall pins Lasbra off to the side, and now Nika has struck pay dirt for the Oni Warrior. So 1 for 1, Lasbra down, Cubo Fred down, both junglers take a tumble. And I kind of want to return to that thought there, Gore. Lasbra 1 level ahead of Cubo Fred. It was 2 levels for Ven in the mid lane, just now down to 1. But 2 levels for Vote over in the duo lane. That's kind of where things tilt back in that favor.
And there's this awkward portion. It's not affecting Barra too much. You can see he's still stepping up in lane, but this is where things start to feel a lot more awkward. He's not going to be able to take those boxing matches as easily anymore. I mean, Vote, especially with beads, his ult's going to be coming back up soon. Bear's Boar isn't going to be able to do enough to save him. The traps aren't going to be able to do enough to save him. That level deficit and the item deficit specifically as of right now is going to feel really bad for him to take the fight. And yet he's still standing up there. That's the thing that I think is most impressive with me, and I think it speaks to Barracuda's confidence. And that is that he's able to at least be present in the lane. Not so far out of it that he's absolutely done in this matchup, but enough that you're going to be caught off guard a few times.
Well, it is 2 levels for Ven still, so it's kind of one carry for each team having a decent level lead over their counterpart. Maybe that's why. That's a half health Dardes off 1 unstable vortex that connects, and a little bit of minion damage there as well. And you mentioned item discrepancy for Barracuda. And I totally agree, because you have a finished Odibo compared to what I'm assuming will turn into a Rage here for Barra. Both have Ikavail, so boxing potential somewhat even there. But Barra abandoning the Odibo and then what had been Silver Branch after that for a little while on this Artemis. Crit right away for Barra on this Artemis, and I think that'll be interesting to follow along with. Won't feel great if Neilma is able to get a kill here. Beads for Barra are ready. The push for Neilma will send him against the wall. Barracuda lets the boar go, but it does not matter. Neilma walks into lane and walks out with a kill.
Yeah, that's the one that's really going to hammer it home, right? That's the one that you are going to be feeling now. You're 0-3 and 0. And they've just been sitting on you. I mean, this is one of those things, like, you hear Zapman talking about it in his ranked games. It's just the way things go.
Dardes did it again. You stealth in, you get the stun, and you get Lasbra dead. Cubo Fred is now the beneficiary. Awesome, Jake. Waltzing on away. Gore, feels like a bit of Phase 2 playoff hangover here for the Olympus Bolts. The Oni Warriors have come to play, and they're playing fast.
And they're playing so clean as well. I mean, despite the fact that they had a little bit of a discrepancy, like, it hasn't affected Dardes in the least. He hasn't taken that into account. I mean, maybe a little bit more damage gets thrown his way when Vin is in the matchup, but otherwise,
I'd argue
he
has
been
more impact.
More than happy with
Right.
it. Yeah, I mean, having a huge impact in the rotations. Vin doesn't use his ult there. Dardes has been ulting, not necessarily on cooldown, but very consistently just now. Picked up the Divine Ruin as well, so he's got enough power to really pack his punch. And they've been playing really well alongside Cuvo. Cuvo has had a very lackluster year. I mean, last year was very similar, where a long time it was just kind of like, okay, sometimes he has great games, sometimes he doesn't. And so far, this has been one of his really great games.
Is it happening again to Barra? Nearly did. Vote was a little bit too far away. Also didn't have the ultimate. Could have been the 4th kill of the game on Barra. It is now a 3-level lead for Vote over in the dual lane. And Vote has not gone back in a little while. 2,200 gold for Vote to spend back in base, and he will spend it on a Silver Branch bow. So this ROM definitely in a strong point, despite some of the changes to the bow build. So the game plan for Barracuda Gore at this point is got to be dead set on farming, staying alive, because, you know, falling behind to Vote is one thing that's already happened. You got to stay relevant. You got to get relevant, not even stay relevant. You got to get to a point of relevancy on this Artemis.
Well, he's hit level 12, which I'm going to give credit to, because now you have the Aegis. The problem is that everybody wants you dead. It feels like the Warriors just keep coming over here. With the positioning Barra has, I don't know that he's too worried about it. In fact, Cubo might be caught out.
Yeah, why not fight on the side of the map where your lead is? And that's what the Oni Warriors are agreeing with. Taunt from Cubo Fred. Cubo dodges out so much and gets the heal, played so well by the Erlang Shen, but the reinforcements are in from the Oni Warriors. Can they close that gap? It'll be difficult. Dardes wants to transform into the Giannis and send the whole team forward, but that won't matter. Venenu's going to have to walk away. And that's important. I said play on the side of the map where your lead is, right, if you're the Oni Warriors. Maybe you got to do the same thing if you're the Bolts. Despite having no kills and no assists, Venenu still has a level lead. And so having that Giannis there will maybe help even up the score.
It should be where some of the pivots come, right? A lot of damage in that last fight happened only because Vin is there. I mean, Barra gets focused out super early on. But again, now at level 12, next back, whenever that happens, should be able to pick up his Aegis, should, at this point, with the Golden Hand, be able to pick up a hefty item chunk as well. Because that early Rage, it's going to be helpful when it starts getting stacked. It is not necessarily going to be this insane jump the same way I think we're going to be seeing with the Silver Branch bow on the other side. So with Vote having the level lead and the item lead, one-on-ones are still going that way. Ultimately, though, Bear's build at the same time, like we say this about hunters all the time. Once you get 5 items online,
Right.
you're fine, man.
Right, doesn't matter.
You're 3 levels behind, don't take the 1v1. But in the middle of a team fight, you're still going to be hitting pretty hard. The problem is he's just barely above Neilbaugh in terms of experience, and so that's where a lot of these moments are going to take a lot more presence. You need to be farming.
That's difficult from Venenu. Through space and time, not there. But Vote's going to die. You send 4 people under the Tier 1 tower to kill off Vote, and it works out. Remember, it was 3 levels down was Barracuda. 1 rotation in, and just some space for this Artemis to farm has caught Barracuda up a couple of levels, maybe even a chance to catch up in the next 30 seconds while Vote's dead.
It's actually, like, insanely important to me that Barra is the one that gets that kill. If anybody else on the team gets the kill, it's still a good kill, but nowhere near as big a deal because that, I mean, just watch how much that skyrocketed. Plus, I'm sure there was a big bounty on Vote as well, having done so well with such a high level. That's a great rotation.
Well, Dardos transforms into Terra once again. Venenu can still do a whole lot of damage here. Does not have his through space and time. So the portals, the unstable vortexes, these are going to have to hit. Dardes uses the Aegis, and so he'll stay alive. Had to use the beads in that engagement as well. Awesome Jake dropped his ult. Maybe you're feeling good, though, if you're the Bolts. You get both of the relics off of the mid laner of the Oni Warriors. Neilbaugh still hungry for more, though. Sends a Nene Venenu's way, pushes Awesome Jake right back into the backline of the Oni Warriors, but Jake will dash away. Lasbra and Haddix have their eyes on Cubo Fred. Venenu no good on the through space and time as far as damage goes, but it's teleported the Giannis right into the back. Lasbra with a big Lord of the Afterlife help close the gap on a Cubo Fred, and the damage from Venenu helped out in that regard as well.
Oh, but the portal's closed before Lasbra can take it. He does still get out of there, but the snipes are coming down.
1 too good. Vote answers back with a kill onto Lasbra as Cubo Fred has died off as well. We've seen that trade a couple of times where both junglers going down for one team or the other. And look, all the kills have been going for the Oni Warriors, a lot of them, literally all of them onto Lasbra and Barracuda. But we haven't checked in on Gold in a little while, and I'm glad we can now. Experience nearly dead even. Gold beneath 1,000. So the Oni Warriors driving the aggression, driving the kills, but the Bolts have maintained relevancy, Gore, in the first 20 minutes.
And we didn't talk a lot about the objectives. Bolts earlier take a Pyromancer, and they get it pretty cleanly. That's their favorite. Like, if they can go for a first objective in any game, always put money on the Pyromancer because that is their favorite to go to. It's safe. If you lose it, it's not this big risk, but if you win it, you do get a nice little chunk of gold into your pocket. But then it was answered back with that Gold Fury by the Oni Warriors. And so this is where things get a little more tumultuous for both of these teams. Pyromancer's available on the right-hand side, and you can see Lasbra at least with speed up, blue buffs up. They're about to have a Scorpion over there, maybe putting a little bit of pressure onto that. But you can see that Jake is making sure to get some vision with the Oni Fury available. I mean, that's such good pressure, especially with only 1 tower being down on the entire map. It can pivot a lot of this game and really transition it in favor of the Bolts if they get it, or help the Warriors solidify something feeling more like a lead if they're able to pick that one.
Well, Awesome Jake on this Terror receives a little bit of poke from the Oni Warriors. And kind of continuing along with Jake, as we mentioned, his journey to get vision, and now Neilmaw's journey to counter out some of that vision. Terra has been the transformation target for Dardes over the last couple of fights, maybe by necessity or maybe by choice score. I mean, look, we know what Earthen Fury can do in these team fights and the abilities of Terra to amplify up some of that damage. And so maybe both teams having an Earthen Fury, and notably the Oni Warriors gaining one, is what's most important on Dardes' mind. Maybe that's why we've seen this transformation a couple times.
It's helped him keep alive, but it's also helpful in the middle of a team fight, so we'll have to watch him here
nice
because
pin.
this rotation is going to be huge.
Venenu could go big in this fight. You need through space and time to connect. You need to get that damage from your mid laner. Neilmaw walks right on through, but they've left Haddix in the back line. Should be a kill here onto Haddix. Through space and time clips Cubo Fred, but Vote has found the opening kill, and now everyone from the Bolts turning tail, trying to run on away, but Barracuda locked into place here. He'll get burned on away in just a moment, and it's Nika who deals the killing blow. It's Venenu and Awesome Jake, the last 2 alive. The Oni Warriors come up big around the Fury.
I mean, you've got 9 kills, and 8 of them are on the jungler and the carry. Like, it is perfect for the Warriors, the way they've been able to get these kills. Just icing on top that Haddix dies in that engagement. The Sobek does not get anything done that he would like to. No plucks, no knockups, nothing for the setup because he was just too far separated from the team. And I love the fact that the Oni Warriors recognize where their prowess is. They've got 20 seconds without Barra, another 10 without Lasbra. Ignore the Oni Fury. That can come later. Get a Fire Giant.
Yep, and you've got a level 19, 3, 1, and 5 ROM to help you deal damage to the Fire Giant with chin size as well. So there's no shortage of damage by any means, Gore, onto the FG, maybe even on to Awesome Jake. Cubo, Fred, and Nika will throw a couple body blocks his way. So Awesome Jake should die here. Awesome Jake will die here. Takes the ultimate from Nika, but not really worried about it. Fire Giant turned back to by the Oni Warriors. And remember, when it was like 6-3, I'm thinking this game's still pretty close, gold and XP-wise. Now the doors have been blown off. The Oni Warriors have the ability to take all 6 of the towers that the Bolts still have standing.
And, I mean, they pick up a Pyromancer. Again, there's still an Oni Fury technically hanging out there on the left-hand side. There's a lot of open opportunity for them to take this lead and crank it about as fast as you can. Plus, I mean, it's 10 seconds now, but because of that stagger kill, it's a 4v5 for 40 full seconds that Jake was not available while the rest of the team was there. They can't step up. They can't fight things like the Oni Fury. They can't really, and shouldn't be, defending these tier 1s. The only thing they can do is what they're doing up on right, which is push down some of these towers, get a little bit of gold back while you can, while they aren't being aggressors, because otherwise you're going to be playing defense. That's the only offensive play that you can really pull in the book right now. And now they're going to have to fall back and try to catch up and block off the Warriors, maybe for a tier 2.
Yep.
But I'm definitely starting to look towards Phoenixes if I'm the Bulls.
And it still feels like, Gore, you know, Venenu had that lead. Still has a slight lead. Was 2 levels a moment ago, but now Dardes is going to catch up in the experience department. Plenty of burst damage for this Giannis, you know, third to highest rather on the damage charts. Really the worrying trend now is Votes reach level 20 and Barracuda still down at level 17. So that's the big level discrepancy here, and you're gonna need your board to do a whole lot of work here. If you're Barracuda, left side Phoenix Siege begins by the Oni Warriors. Neomon chain CC'd on down. He'll use his ult. Haddix will use his as well. Through space and time, finds its way into the back line. Lasper leaps in, but the taunt is good from Cubo Fred. Haddix blocks a minion, and Numa is able to blink away up to the skies. Goes Vote, Barracuda, caught in the middle of everything, and Vote puts him down one more time. Down from the skies comes this Ram, a great portal from Venenu. Might secure his escape.
And now they could just collapse right back in. I mean, Vin's so low, he's out of this fight. You can at least get the Phoenix here.
And you don't have Barracuda if you're the Olympus Bolts. The Oni Warriors will realize their advantage. They'll get the Phoenix on left. They won't push too far. And the left side Phoenix falls. And Gore, that is tough. The Olympus Bolts have a few kills on the menu there, and they're not able to eat. And they lose their left side Phoenix and Barracuda for the 5th time.
I mean, a comedy of errors as well that leads up to that. That's a good fight from the Bolts in certain scenarios of it. And it's sandwiched by 2 things that just cause chaos for them. One was actually before the fight even starts, Vin was helping push up in mid, and his back got stopped initially by some of the Oni minions. So not only did they see that he wasn't at the Phoenix, he had to run into the jungle and then channel the back again. So he was delayed in getting to the Phoenix for the fight. That helps the Warriors step in. And then he hits an insane, good damage. They go through, they're getting engaged, and then Haddix hits a minion with his pluck, and that it dies on impact. Like, you can see all of the wind in their sails disappear in that play because Haddix can't close the gap anymore. Neil's going to get out of here. His blink has been used, and they recognize that they're not going to be able to kill Vote. Vote even turns the kill around. It just all fell apart.
Yeah, I don't know, Gore. Barracuda's been level 17 since the last time that I referenced it, so still 3 levels down under Vote. And this is tough, right? I mean, because what you want if you're Barra is to sit back, farm up all these minions, but your team is so grouped up, you're clearing these waves as everyone, so it's going to take a little while for him to catch right on up. And as I mentioned with the FG, which is coming to a close in 30 seconds, the Oni Warriors have the ability to get all 6 towers on the map.
Yeah.
They do so, and they get the left side Phoenix. Should be feeling just fine after going back and spending on this next FG. 24 minutes won't be enhanced yet. But this is interesting shot call territory for the Bolts. Do you step up? Do you realize you don't really have a chance? Do you have a better opportunity under your Phoenix? Difficult decisions for the Olympus Bolts on how to stay in this game.
Right now, I'm shifting Barra to anywhere that is safe where he can still get farm. Whether it is clearing back camps, if it's going for a minion wave, it is trying to get him to level 20 and maybe get a little bit more gold in the pocket. Because if you just watched it, the Warriors, you had mentioned it, but 6 towers that get knocked down, plus they get the Phoenix. They've got a lot of gold to spend. A lot of them backed and bought a full tier 3 item out of their pocket. And while the Fire Giant buff is worn off, that makes things a little more equal. There's now a full item ahead for Cuvo. It's going to be a defensive item because they both have the chin size, but all of a sudden that means Cuvo is going to live a little longer than Lasbury. You've got a full power item on Vin, almost a full item up for Dardes, things like that that are really starting to shake it out. In fact, it's Dardes and Venenu right now that are the closest in the game. And so I think a lot of the pressure is falling onto the mid laner here. You had mentioned it earlier. Vin hits his ult. then all of a sudden everything falls into line and it's perfect.
Right.
But I'm looking at a Morgan that is 0-9 of 11 kills. You've got 9 assists. You are feeling very, very fortuitous with this.
Yep.
And no one's been able to deal with him. Not a single kill onto Dardes.
Now, Dardes has been hard to lock down, especially when Terra's been that transformation. You get plenty of tankiness on the end, or I guess during the transformation if you're Dardes and that's the route you go. This is where you have to be careful. Dardes stealthed in the jungle here. So many plays made by this mid laner on the left side of the map by that red buff. Same ability to do so here around this FG. Dardes can stealth forward, find a stun. The rest of the Oni Warriors can turn around and immediately collapse in. Haddock's not the ideal target, not easy to blow up in the same way that one of the carries might be, but the Fire Giant has been dropped. 3-man taunt from Cubo Fred, but has it slowed the bolts down enough?
Separated.
Look at this, Barracuda can't get into the fight through space and time. Will flip around this engagement. Now the Olympus bolts are trying to back away onto the Oni Warrior side of the jungle. Snipes waiting Barracuda 1 and 2, or 2 and 3 rather, are not there. The Harpies nearly sniffed out Barra, but Barra and Ven on the wrong side of this engagement, Gore. They're going to have to go back. Cubo Fred does fall, so that's a win for the Olympus Bolts.
Yeah, a nice pickup for them. They slow down Cubo. They pull out so many ults. Granted, everybody dropped theirs, but Vin maintains both of his relics. Might even be able to save that left side Phoenix, putting themselves at about as neutral as you can get. With the way this game has been going, this is as close as you can get. Of course, I say that, and now you've got to spend
perfect.
45 seconds without Jake. That is going to be unfortunate. Once Cubo comes up, that means the Warriors not only have a numbers advantage, but I think a distinct advantage with both their front lines still being available. But relic choices are still going to be big. Vote didn't have to use either of his, so you've got the 2 main carries that are really kind of standing forward. Safe as can be. And I think that's going to be the conversation for this next fight, is who can lock them down. With Jake still gone for 20 seconds, I think the advantage goes to the Warriors right here in the 4v4.
It got to be. I was going to say maybe luckily for the Olympus Bolts. Jake, you know, up in 10 seconds. The Oni Warriors not gung-ho to start up this FG just yet. But yeah, I figured it would only be a matter of time. You clear out some of those wards, send Vote forward. Neoma, the only one you need to tank up some of that damage. Bear's on the left side of the map right now. Bear's just not involved in this fight at all. That gives you, I think, a hint at what the Olympus Bolts are thinking around this Fire Giant. So the Fire Giant will go quietly to the Oni Warriors. The Olympus Bolts happy to step back, send some poke damage forward, and try their hand at a Phoenix defense. And maybe it makes some sense, Score. Outside of the kills that got away, the Bolts didn't look horrible under the left side Phoenix, considering how lopsided the game was at that point.
And again, there were a couple of very small mistakes that are really the only things that I think prevent that from being as prominent as it could have been. It could have been a really, really good Phoenix defense with good kills, good damage from Vin. It's just a small pluck and then a little late arrival from Venenu that I think slows them down a little bit there. So ideally, planning for that, they should be good. But I'm looking at Bear's level. I think he was still 18 to the 20 that's been on the other side.
He's been 17 or 18
time.
for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, his items aren't there as well, so you know, you're getting a lot more out of Vote than you're getting out of Barra, but you're getting a little more, just teensy bit more damage at least out of Vin than you're seeing out of Dardes. It comes down to the junglers. I think Cuvo has been great at the setup so far.
Yep.
But he got blown up last time. He had to use his taunt to defend himself as opposed to being aggressive, and I think that's the kind of play the Bolts need to look for.
I mean, the good news, if you can put up another Phoenix defense, save the game one more time if you're the Bolts, the good news is, while it's going slow, that gap between Barra and Vote level, it's continually getting smaller. Vote can't go up in levels anymore. Can maybe buy power pots, things like that. But what is this? It's not my birthday at all. Not even close.
It has a picture of Jithens.
Oh, it's Jithens down there. I thought they were putting that under me. Yeah, happy birthday, Jithens. Flood his Twitter and chat right now with all of the exciting birthday messages that you guys got for him. Gore, this has been a back and forth game. If we zoom back out for a second while we're in this pause, I think we expected the Bolts to come out better.
Yeah.
I'll admit it. I think we
Period.
expected the Warriors to, I don't want to say come out worse, but maybe a little bit slower. And I think expectations have been flipped here in Game 1.
I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be completely candid with my thoughts on this set coming into today. It was going to be a 2-0 for the Bolts.
Yep.
10 minutes of each game were going to be competitive, and then the Bolts were going to start picking it up and have been in the next 15, so the 10-minute to the 25-minute mark, they were going to take control and win the game. That's just that's the way they play, and that's typically how it goes usually when you're playing up against a team like the Warriors. But the Warriors, I mean, this is night and day to the team. They were locking Opwash in at the Phase 2 playoffs 2 weeks ago, and yet now they're controlling the flow of this game. It is night and day compared to what we have seen out of them. And a lot of it is coming down to where their jungle play has been, as well as where a lot of this focus has been in the middle of the fights. They put down Lasbra and Bera for the majority of the game. I mean, we're talking about it, and I'm going to mention it again. Bera hasn't been able to play catch-up for 10 minutes, it feels like. He has been sitting around at least 3 levels down from the ROM on the other side from Vote. And so I think that there's a lot of good shot calling early on that has really opened the door for the Warriors to show off their late game that we typically don't even get to see.
Yeah, right. That's very important to remember here. We're talking about how far behind Barracuda is. And that's for good reason. The Warriors selected him.
They sat on him, and he's 1-5. Like they made sure that Artemis couldn't exist.
And I guess that's always been the threat, hasn't it? Especially with the ROM on the other side and the ability to close that gap. That's been the threat around this Artemis, where if everyone just dives on you, you can drop the boar and you can stun maybe for a second if nobody has those beads. But you're not super mobile, if really at all. And so Barracuda was selected to die, and unfortunately it's happened a lot.
And you know what? The first death didn't really do too much. Like, he was still present. Second death really didn't do too much. Is the third one that happened that it kind of clicked when it was like, okay, I'm not going to get the farm I need. I'm not going to be present enough. Like, there's not anything I can do about this because the Warriors have selected me. Again, 1-5. Lasbra's been able to pick up a few of the kills, but I think that's been the problem, is just like you haven't had the same damage output.
The good news is, Gore, we have reached level 20 on everyone that is not a support here in this game. So Barracuda has closed up that level gap.
And his items are pretty close.
His items are close, you know, essentially a chin size down. Both builds went different directions. Titan's Bane, though, as Icavale gets sold off by Vote, Titan's Bane gets picked up. And so that's a big difference. Vote also has the starter item completed. So make no mistake, there's still a good lead in the hunter role here that Barracuda's got to catch up. Starter item selling off the Icavale. Looks like a Titan's Bane anyway for Barra. But something to look towards. Maybe this is what you have to look for if you're the Bolts. You got Venenu and you got Haddix outside of your base here. If you can find a sneaky pick, you're kind of shutting down the last couple of minutes of this Fire Giant play.
It keeps my eyes on specifically Vote's ult, because that has been essential. The last fight, where technically they lose it because Cuvo goes down, he misses a couple of shots on Barra. Admittedly, there's some portal shenanigans and distance that is kept from Barra from falling there. So I think that there's a lot of pressure from Vote where that ult goes, because it can be a get-out-of-jail-free card, but also a lot of turnaround damage. And Dardes, depending on who he transforms into for this fight. It's either going to be the setup machine that we've been watching, and we're going to have, another Terra ult that comes through and makes the Oni Warriors pop off when they jump under the Phoenix, or he might turn into another one of these damage dealers and potentially try to erase Vin or Barra much faster.
Could this be the final base siege of the game when the Oni Warriors upset the Bolts in game number 1? What a way to start off phase 3, if that is the case. But the Bolts have stayed alive in this game. We've crested the 30-minute mark now, and so some of those gaps that were there have started to close up a little bit. Still items, still gold discrepancies between a couple of those roles. So the Bolts not fully caught up, but they're less behind than maybe they were a few moments ago. This one being slow played a bit by the Oni Warriors. Cuvo, Fred, and Dardes will split over in the mid lane there. 3 for the Oni Warriors here on left, but slowly the health bar of this Phoenix has been going down. The dive is in through space and time. Connects onto Nika, but look at the damage onto Awesome Jake. He immediately has to turn away. Looks like he dropped his ultimate in this fight as well, and that's potentially a pretty big loss here, Gore, if there's going to be a re-siege in just a moment.
I mean, they've got Fire Giant sustain in and of itself. That's good. Jake's going to be able to heal up, no problem. I think Lasbra is actually going to be back into base. But that Phoenix is one hit. I mean, you're making a stand. You're really trying to make sure that Vote can't hit this.
I love the traps on the left from Barracuda. Nika doesn't, so he'll blink right over the top. Barracuda is taking so much damage. Aegis is there. Pin is there. Snipes are there. Vote on a rampage. Left side Phoenix goes down. Lasbra's in the back line alone, and he'll join Barracuda in the grave. The Olympus Bolt scattering as 3, scattering as 2 if Awesome Jake ends up going down. Venenu will use the Aegis, get back to the fountain, but the Oni Warriors as 5, they group up around the Titan, and they'll put the Bolts down in game 1.
Just finding the exact amount of burn, a good target, and again, who is the first one to go down? Who are they looking to isolate? Barracuda. They jump in immediately onto Barra because they recognize this Artemis. A very high priority pick. We saw Band in set number 1, and someone that has been top of the leaderboards, at least in terms of tier lists, for the last 4 weeks, 5 weeks, however long it's been. And so it makes sense that that is where their pressure is going, and they recognize that's where all the return damage is. I mean, you've got an Osiris, he's all right, but he's not going to be enough. Vin, Yanis, if he misses the ult or if it's used a little early in the middle of a fight, all of a sudden, you can just run back in.
Right.
And once they saw that was out, I think the Warriors buckled down.
Right, Nika got hit by that through space and time, and then we took a deep breath for like 10 seconds, and he was full HP again
Yeah.
by the end of it. The Oni Warriors, they've come to play here in phase number 3. Take a 1-0 set lead over the Olympus Bolts. Will it be a 2-0 over the Bolts? I don't know. He doesn't know. You don't know.
No, I don't.
Stick around. We'll find out.
I gave up dabbing for Lynn.
Cool. No more dabbing for final. He looked at me and said, I'm going to be on that stage next year. I'm going to become a world champion.
And welcome back here to the SMITE Pro League, powered by Alienware. Oni Warriors come up with a big win in game number 1, putting the Olympus Bolts at a deficit in this first set, and maybe a little surprising to some after the performance from the playoffs. The Warriors kind of had a bit of a struggle in that first day, but they're looking strong here in game number 1. You know, Neil said there were two things here, Mifflin, from that interview with Neil that came through. One of them was, you know, Umoja maybe not anything new out here, even with the nerfs. The second one was Vote's out here cracking the whip, and he did so in game number 1.
Yeah, Vote was looking incredibly strong. The entirety of the Oni Warriors look really good. For my money, I think it really comes down to that Gold Fury engagement where they're able to pick up 2 or 3 kills and then immediately transition over towards that Fire Giant. After that, it just felt like the Bolts really weren't too much in it. I mean, there was that one engagement where they find a pick, 1 for 0, then the Bolts has Jake stick around a little bit too long. He loses his life. Desync death means that, again, the Oni Warriors are playing with the majority of the Onifs after that. The main takeaway I have from game 1 of this set so far is that the Oni Warriors were a team that struggled mightily in the team fight phase and previous parts of the season, and now that seems to be one of their strengths. I mean, it was coordinated efforts to make sure everyone was getting out alive. It was coordinated dives to make sure that they were finding these priority targets, and it legitimately, it just looked clean. You said maybe a couple people were surprised by this game 1. I would say that the majority are surprised, and look, I know a lot of people lost some viewer points off of that one too.
If I could put my viewer points in there, I may have lost them for it, but the Phoenix fight on... it always tells me that I probably can't. I guess because I'm mod on there, so it's like, hey, if you put it, then you can't do things for it. But I don't know what with it for it. But even still, Oni Warriors come with a big one. I think that one of those Phoenix fights where Neil Ma gets really low, you see that there's some big damage that can come from the Bolts, but they weren't able to close any of those kills for it. Neil was able to walk away. Then Venenu got turned back against, and he had to retreat back to the base. And even with the Oni Warriors having a bit of a rough fight around that Phoenix, they were still able to turn it around, get a kill, get the Phoenix, and get out with all 5 members back alive. Looking at the damage charts for it, Vote with 26,500 players. I didn't even realize his number had skyrocketed so high up the list, but with the amount of kills he was able to put on the board, really no surprise.
Yeah, it seems pretty clear that you need to address Vote in the P's and B's coming up, man, because that guy cannot be allowed to have a repeat performance of game 1. That ROM coming into a bad matchup, by the way, as well. I mean, we already broke it down earlier, but if you use that Astral Barrage, that for the ultimate from ROM, you're going to land into an Artemis Trap, and that's not exactly where you want to find yourself, but it didn't really come up ever. It was never an issue for him.
Now, one of those, you know, that was one of the struggles you highlighted for this matchup, but Vote doesn't care about that struggle at all. Not one bit. This game comes up with a bunch of big kills for his team. Oni Warriors up 1-0. And heading in towards game number 2, you were saying that maybe some light needs to be shown over Vote's way. Maybe take a couple of picks away from him. Maybe a couple of bans early on. Or is it kind of one of those things where maybe you just take a certain god away from him and put him on something different?
I think that it's either you need to draft a little bit more aggression from the Olympus Bolts inside of the lane just to make sure that he isn't allowed to free farm, Vote that is, or maybe you put some emphasis on your jungler to head over towards the long lane, but I don't think you really want to ban Rom. That's not really something that you're allowed to do in Smite anymore.
Well,
maybe,
you are.
Well,
I mean,
yes,
you
are
can do
physically allowed to do it, but you're probably letting some much better stuff through if that is the case. I'm excited to see how this one pans out. If Vote doesn't pick his Hunter in the top 3, I'm expecting a lot of Hunter bans to ring his way.
And one thing we even saw early on was, characteristically, Lasbro will make these level 2, level 3 ganks towards dual lane. But it was Cuvo who was doing that this time around, and he was able to get them a little bit of a lead, able to get them an earlier kill at that level 6-7 gank. But let's see how picks and bans draft out this time around for the Warriors and the Bolts as we get ready to dive into game number 2 for it. As you said, probably no ROM bans away, maybe just a little bit more aggression. What kind of those picks are you looking for if you're trying to go up against this dual lane?
Maybe something similar to what Panda Cat's going for. Danzaburo comes to mind as something you get aggressive on. Some like warrior-style supports that Jake's had a lot of success on in the past. Even if he wants to go towards something like the Amir and let the ROM through for the Oni Warriors, that's got a really strong counter matchup, just the ability to lock him down with that wall. There are a couple avenues you could take, but I'm not expecting to see too many shift-ups in this portion. The bans from Game 1, I wouldn't be overly surprised if we see the exact same thing here in Game 2.
So far, it is the same two first bans, Odin and Artio. Now, Kepri to round that out. It makes 3 for 3 so far. We'll see if all of them shake through. Yamoja makes it 4 for 4. Now, I believe we had a Circuit in this spot by the Bolts if they want to make it a nice even 5. Or actually, it'd be a nice odd 5 for it. But instead, it'll be the Morgan. Banned away from Dardes and a Hell on the flip end. So the only thing changed so far in these first bans is a Morgan in place of a Circuit. And how do you feel about this Morgan ban kind of popping here against it?
I mean, it makes sense to me. The Morgan has a very strong performance in Game 1, so you don't want to deal with that whatsoever. So, sure, but what does that leave up and available? Tiamat still up. Maybe the Bolts go there in the first pit.
Psych.
Okay.
Nope.
No, yeah, Circuit's good, but she's not Tiamat good. Gotta think the only Warriors are gonna take it here, right? I mean, they've already got their mid lane banned away. Okay, cool.
Was Tiamat even banned in the first? Tiamat wasn't banned in the first phase last time, and she wasn't picked. Was it second phase that she got banned away, and
couldn't tell you, man. My recall is tough.
So we didn't even have Tiamat in last game, and certainly not in the top 6 of the bans or the top 6 picks. So maybe a little bit of a less favor of that god for these two teams. They were really prioritizing this Circuit, and with all due right, both Jake and Lasbra have strong performances on this god. It gives that level of flexibility that not too many other teams do have with this god.
All right, cool. So if Tiamat isn't your priority, surely Raijin gets picked, right? Or one of these other priority mages here. Sobek locked in, good front line, has flex potential into both solo and support. But I've got my eyes on this mid lane selection, and I just gotta think the Bolts are gonna take it here. Doesn't have to necessarily be one of the ones I've named, but if they don't pick a mid laner, it's very likely it gets banned out. But instead, it is gonna be the Rom to strip one pick away from the Oni Warriors. This is a very interesting P's and B's.
Yeah, in previous sets, we've been seeing, Raijin, Tiamat, kind of the pivotal mage picks be the first pick no matter what on either side. You get one, well, then you can kind of not pick it immediately for your first 2 if there's one on the end of it.
Okay.
And then you kind of wait till a third. But instead, we're saying, to heck with all of the priority mage picks here. It's going to be an Aphrodite banned away in game number 1 in the second phase, but this time the Warriors do lock it in before they get to that second round of bans.
Yeah, I'd argue that this is a priority pick just only for the Oni Warriors. So it makes sense to me that they take it for themselves here because it would have likely gotten banned in this second phase by the Bolts, and now the Warriors have a very consistent front line. I mean, either Erlang Shen or Cerberus can just walk in, attached to an Aphrodite, going to be nigh unkillable. Both of them having decent self-sustain. Both of them now also gaining beneficial to sustain from the Aphrodite herself, as well as CC and damage immunity for a limited time. And the Oni Warriors, they're doing what we were expected, man. Raijin ban, wouldn't be too surprised if we see Tiamat, but if you're right and we didn't see her banned at all in game 1, I mean, why do it? You don't need to waste a ban if they're just not going to pick it.
Well, with the first bans through, Raijin and Terra on the other side of the board for the Bolts is their first ban coming in the second phase for it. Curious where the rest of it will go through. We could see a Tiamat ban. We could see just some other mage ban here.
Giannis.
It will be Giannis taken away, making sure to keep Venenu off of that comfort pick. Don't give it to him a second time around. And Artemis, who is somehow made it all the way through here, but that's because there was a ROM selection here for the Bolts in this first 3, as opposed to picking up the Artemis previously. Now, Vote's going to have to go to something a little bit further back. I say further back, but Izanami's available if they want to go for that one, and instead it'll just be another Kuzenbo game. So far, all they've done is just trade out what they have in that third selection. Last time it was ROM, this time it's Aphrodite, but everything else, still the same draft here for the Warriors.
Consistency, man. I mean, it's a clear strategy that they're bringing into this composition. There's a clear strategy that they brought into the set, and it is frontline emphasis. Cerberus, Kuzenbo, and Erlang Shen gonna have a very fun time diving whoever the Bolts decide to pick for their mid laner, and at a unfortunate position to find himself in. I do feel for Ven here, because looking at this draft right now from the Oni Warriors, there's not many picks that you're saying, yeah, I want this here. This makes me feel safe. This is a great pick into this, because that's how strong this front line is already from the Oni Warriors. So you can see Ven going to wait a little bit longer on his pick. Camazot's locked in, and if that is going to be a Scylla lock, it makes a little bit of sense. Having a traditional leap and CC immunity inside of the ultimate would help you out a lot. The cripple on the first ability, Sikkim, as well, going to be able to stop some of that aggression from Erlang Shen or Kuzenbo as they're dashing towards you. But high execution composition here from the Bolts. I mean, there's good CC lockdown between Surket and Sobek to set up for this Scylla, but I don't know, man. If I'm on the Warriors, I'm like, word, let's dive Scylla, and it's just a good strategy here.
I mean, what a day one we're getting here for kicking off Phase 3. I mean, we had a Ra in Game 1 and a Muzenka, and then we're getting an Aphrodite in the second game, and now we're getting an Aphrodite ban in Game 1 of this set and a pick in this, and now we have a Scylla. We're just kind of rounding around the gods here. I'm curious how many gods will have been selected by the time the weekend is over. If we're getting Spice picks like this early into Phase 3, this could shape up to be a very interesting phase going forward for it. But with this draft by the Bolts, is this the answer they need to fight back against the Warriors and try and take Game 2, Mifflin?
Surket, good anti-heal. Camazotz can get off to a quick start. Rom going to be able to finish off some of these kills from a range. And if anyone's below 50%, you might as well call I'm a monster and execute. I like this draft from the Bolts. But the Oni Warriors composition has the potential to control the early game and then snowball from there. I mean, if an Erlang Shen pulls ahead, that's already pretty crippling. If an Erlang Shen with a pocket Aphrodite pulls ahead, that's stifling. I have got great concerns for the Bolts here throughout the early. Their one saving grace in the early game, the Olympus Bolts that is this Camazotz. He needs to set the pace on this pick, and if it's not happening there, the Bolts are just going to try their best to slow down this game and take it as late as possible, whereas the Oni Warriors, they've got the onus to just get aggressive and stay aggressive.
So we're looking at a Camazotz for the jungle here for Lasbra, and that means it's going to be a Surket Rom lane going up against Kuzenbo Heimdall. And I'm not sure where I kind of give the edge to the pressure there. It kind of just feels like Kuzenbo Heimdall could just walk through here, but maybe there is some bounce back of this duo lane.
I mean, Kuzenbo Heimdall should have superior kill potential, but as far as wave clear goes, I'm giving it to the Rom just because he has got the ability to auto-attack the entire wave. Feels pretty good for him, but stepping up that aggressively to auto-attack the entire wave puts you in position to get Sumo Slammed or Gallarhorned or something crazy along those lines. So there's a lot of nuance inside of this long lane. I think it really does come down to the jungles.
The Oni Warriors are looking to close out the set with a 2-0, but can the Bolts bring us back to Game 3? We're going to take it away to the casters to bring the action.
Bounce back time for the Olympus Bolts. Here in game number 2, the Oni Warriors score. This would be a surprise and an upset to start off phase number 3 if they not only get a win over the Bolts, but a 2-0 win over the Bolts. And they've drafted a similar composition as so far as Nika and Cubo Fred and Neoma. They have to pivot their carries up a little bit. And to be fair, the swap of Dardes to Aphrodite from Morgan is a decent pivot.
I mean, yeah, it's going to be less damage. I mean, you had mentioned it around the FG in Game 1, but like there's a lot of scenarios where a Morgan can just stealth and decide to pop somebody. If it's a tank, for maybe like a 1/6 of their HP or a 1/4 of their HP. If it's carry, maybe for half their HP. That's just not going to be available. But it comes in form of something kind of doing the exact opposite, which is, hey, vote. What if you're just never in danger ever? Hey, Cuba, what if you go in, not only do you have your heal, but you have my heal and some immunity? Like, it opens up so many conversations, and Mifflin had just mentioned it on the desk, but if Cuvo starts the game the way that Cuvo was playing last time, now you give that a pocket Afro late game, I think you're in a beautiful spot for the Warriors.
Right, look, Afro's annoying, but even more so in a scenario where whoever's got the Aphrodite in their back pocket, if they're ahead, I mean, it is stifling. I actually think Miff might have used that word exactly. And so that the game plan of the Oni Warriors is clear here. And so an interesting composition on the other side. Gore built out Haddix on the Sobek. That not so interesting given what we've seen recently. But Lasbra on the Camazotz, a decently new look, I think, at this player-god pairing. And also awesome Jake on the Surket. I see Surket locked in for the Bolts. And I'm assuming it's Lasbra because it's such a good pick for Laz. Not a lot of data on how awesome Jake looks on this pick. He's low already, and that's how it looks so far. Cubo Fred takes the crush, and Lasbra jumps in. And Venenu's got first blood already for the Bolts. That's just an overextension from the Erlang Shen, or maybe a good collapse from the Bolts.
I think a little bit of both overall, right? Erlang maybe a little too far forward, trying to look at and get a peak C onto those Oracle Harpies, but you can't underestimate it. Look, damage from Scylla late game is what she is known for. But realistically, early on, that crush is still super oppressive. I can't tell you how many times personally I've been frustrated in mid lane when it hits you. And I think that's something that they're going to have to worry about here. It's just so much utility, even early on, that she brings to the table.
Oh, Neilmod tries to get a push on Jake, gets the push, but then immediately turned around on is the Kuzenbo. So Neilmod takes a little bit of damage here as well. I kind of like this pick for Neil. It feels like when I see a Kuzenbo locked in, you cover up the teams that are on the top of the screen. I'm assuming it's the Oni Warriors. This has been a pick that Neilma has liked so far here in Season 8. Did some good work there in game number 1, Gore. I will pause to see if Venenu is able to steal away this red buff. Not able to steal away, or is able to steal away, excuse me, the buff. Maybe a kill onto Dardez. If nothing else, forces Dardez back a little bit. And this is where you said oppressive. It can be very annoying to play against this pick. So much burst damage, all front-loaded.
And this is a really good start for the Bolts. I mean, the Warriors, not necessarily at this minute mark, but we're really starting to ramp up. They were showing presence. We had already seen a gank onto duo lane, so Cuvo's already been a little more passive. But look at their team, right? Like, is Nika going to come out and just absolutely solo down Haddix, who's playing a Sobek? Probably not.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of good damage you can do with Cerberus. We saw some of it last game, but not as much as you're going to see. Erlong, he's nice, but what follow-up are you going to have? Like, in mid? Aphrodite? Like, the Doves can do some damage, but it's not necessarily my end-all, be-all. I think the entire composition slows down here for the Warriors. If they get ahead, then they become oppressive. They lock you down, and nothing you can do is going to be able to overthrow them. But if you keep it like this, right, you're a little bit ahead if you're the Bolts. It is a team that is comfortable going into the late game.
Fighting on the left side, and it's Awesome Jake. Who else? That started it up. The Bifrost from Vote sends him right on back. We haven't talked much about this Hunter matchup just yet. Barracuda probably not thrilled with the way that game number 1 went. You give yourself something a little bit safer in the ROM, with the roll. The ultimate as well. At least you get a moment to survive and do some extra damage if you're Barra here in this game. But definitely a different look here for Vote. And I think Vote has been so pivotal for this Oni Warriors team. In their successes, it feels like Vote has been at the forefront of a lot of those. And Heimdall Gore, a pick that can facilitate that type of expectation.
It's really weird because in my head, and when I'm starting to think of hyper carries for specifically Hunter role, Heimdall doesn't necessarily jump to the top, anywhere near the top, honestly, but we've seen him hyper carry games. It's one of those weird things where my brain's just like, yeah, like, he can, but maybe not consistently, and that's the only issue. I want to know what Vote we're going to get. Is he going to have the same performance we just saw on ROM or not?
Taunt onto Lasbra from Cuvo Fred. Laz will leap over the wall. The pin does not get the pin, but it does get the damage. And then great follow-up from Neilma. Lasbra is so low. He had beneath 10 HP. They got to get this kill, and they do. Vote is able to pick it up. If Lasbra got away from that, it would have been criminal. And that's smart from the Oni Warriors score. Venenu had that red buff timer, and the Oni Warriors knew that something was going to make its way onto that side of the map.
And it's one of those, again, it's just a frustrating moment, but you don't necessarily need the red buff. Even if it ends up going the other way, you're not stressed about it. The good news is that Dardez is still able to get some experience from it. Aphrodite doesn't need it as much as I think Scylla does right now. So Finn, happy that he has his, but it's not putting down Dardez as much as it is just stripping a little bit of that experience. You notice level 7 versus level 6 here for the Scylla. Has the Divine Ruin online as well. They are looking to make Dardez uncomfortable, and that is why you have to start looking elsewhere. I don't think that you can fight as easily around mid, but last game they didn't. Last game it was all about the duo lane. I'm kind of surprised that Cuvo's been quiet for a lot of this. I mean, that pin was really solid, but he's only been part of 1 kill, whereas last time I feel like we had seen him at least show face in a couple of the lanes a few times.
Yep.
So I kind of want to see him get a little more hands-on soon.
Yeah, Cuvo on Erlong Shen is always interesting. Like, very, very impactful as far as setup goes, but until maybe the last fight in game number 1, Cuvo Fred was at the bottom of the damage charts on Erlong Shen, even beneath Awesome Jake in the supports. But had a high kill participation rate. The taunt and the pin and the knockups is all Cuvo Fred was looking to do, and he was able to do it. So I think that's a good point, Gore. Or maybe it felt like a lot of the damage from Cuvo Fred was front-loaded in game 1, and then was more utility-based as the game went on.
And it might just be because, again, looking at it, if he's the one dumping damage into everybody, where's the follow-up? Like, it's Vote right now, and that's really it. Again, a good stun birds from Dardez could help tick them over. But Dardez, well, actually, I don't know. Look, Aphrodite 2, like that stomp, especially if you can double tap it with whoever you're linked to, can do a lot of damage, but it does tend to take a little bit more time, a little more items. And so I think they're just playing the slow roll if they're the Warriors. And this is the perfect opportunity to do it. I mean, they're 300 gold separating these two teams. It's not anywhere near enough that the Bolts are confident. With I look at Serket, at least I feel like Jake should be getting a little bit more done. I like the fact that the Warriors are, and the Bolts realistically, are just kind of coasting because they both have good transitions into the mid-late game.
An opportunity now for the Oni Warriors to invade onto red. Lasber taking some damage from Dardez. Venenu was able to secure the red buff. Hasn't picked it up yet, and now will go on over and pick that one up. Awesome Jake will dash on away. Vote and Neilma were rotating into that red fight, what would have been a red fight from the left side. But it is a little bit of XP steal and then nothing else from the Oni Warriors. Over in the solo lane, Goro haven't seen much. Doubt we'll see much, and it's going to be maybe similar, if not the exact same from what we saw in Game 1, where eventually these team fights start. And it's all about engage. You know, a good Sobek pluck can end a fight. Yeah. Same thing with a Stygian Torment or a stun on the backside. There is, however, a pivot in the build. Nika still with the Void Stone first. Haddock's not thrilled with the healing perspective of the Oni Warriors composition. Will pick up that Pestilence.
And that actually, it's one of those weird combos that works out really well. Like having some damage overall from Scylla is nice. Yeah, I think, okay, yeah, Jake's out of there. He's fine. Although, I might not
Did you call
be
him
enough
Jacob?
I did say Jacob. I don't know why I said Jacob.
Are you disappointed in him?
Jacob, how dare you get that aggressive? No, he's going to be fine. I'm actually excited for this energy. Again, it's very easy to miss. Bacchus has it. Sobek has it. A few gods have that like built-in anti-heal. And so you actually have some synergy having that Pestilence aura around you. And then a straight-up 50% on top of that anti-heal reduction is going to be very helpful for Haddock, specifically being in the front line.
Agreed. Being up front is where you want to be, especially if you're on, you know, Dardez and whoever Dardez is linked with. That's going to be the important thing, I think, as this game goes on to follow along with there. Are you laughing about Jacob? Or?
Yeah, I've never said Jacob. Like, that's not a name I even say in my regular life. I don't know many Jacobs.
Yeah, I'm not sure I do.
I don't
either.
even know if Jake's name is Jacob. What
That's
if
a great
it's
place.
just
Could just be Jake. I don't know. We're filling.
I don't know his full name.
We're filling the gaps for him. Another attempted red buff though for the Oni Warriors here. An invade. Looks like more of a fight is brewing this time. An Undying Love from Cuvo Fred as Barracuda rotates in, but Barracuda's alone. Not worried about it though. Up to the skies goes the Rom. A couple snipes of damage connecting, and Barracuda's held the last one. I don't know what just chunked that health bar, but I know who finished it, and it's Barracuda. Lasbra will finish off Cuvo Fred as well. Big 2-kill swing for the Olympus Bolts around an attempted red buff invade from the Warriors.
And on 2 prime targets as well. You get rid of the Afro and the Erlong. What kind of fight do you have here? They're even going for the 3v5?
Yeah, not a good look here on the back end for Vote and Neilma. Jump in from Awesome Jake. Vote dashes kind of the wrong way. He's back towards the Bifrost, but it'll cost him his life. Barracuda avoids the pullback. Venenu's got the execute onto Nika. And this is the Olympus Bolts we expected to see this set.
I mean, but I'm also going to say, what are you doing, Warriors? Why'd you go in? It's a 3v5. Like, I think it's something to be said. Vote was locked between a rock and a hard place. People were chasing him down. And, yeah, he ults in an unfortunate direction, but Nika didn't really need to go in there. Neil was already looking like he didn't want to commit. It just felt like a really weird time to try and pick that fight. Whereas for the Bolts, they're more than happy to do it. Scylla still had ults. Everybody's still looking for their setup. Cold Fury had been leashed, so they didn't have any worries about something being stolen from them. So not only do they get, 4 total kills in that fight, at least 3 that they're able to pick up. They get a free Fury. They've got good damage and kind of showcasing that if the Warriors aren't careful, I mean, it's going to slip through their hands like sand.
I assume it was Venenu, a crush from Ven that did that much damage to Dardez at the beginning of the fight. I don't know, Cor. I don't see much else that would have been able to do that much burst damage. But the point being, I know that Scylla is able to do that much burst damage because Venenu has just become an absolute problem here in this game. Dardez just now ticking over to level 11, has been 2 levels behind Venenu up to this point in this game. And Flat Pen is the answer right now for Venenu. I'll go Divine Ruin right into Spear of Deso. Looks like a Soul Reaver on the other side. This Scylla has just changed up this composition enough, and Venenu has played it well enough that's throwing the Oni Warriors for a loop.
And you have to look at the safety on the bolts. I mean, Haddix is going to be able to get out, lurking in the waters, pluck, anything like that for a disengage. Lasbra is Camazotz. Camazotz is the king of getting out of trouble. Vin has CC immunity on the ult, has a nice dash as well to be able to get yourselves away. Awesome Jake is Sirket, who has insane mobility, and Barra, while it's less mobility, Barra's the easiest to kill on this team, and he's playing ROM. He can roll out of there and turn anything around with his
good
ult.
point.
I just think there's a lot of burst damage to initiate a fight if you're looking at the bolts. You combo I'm a monster with a single shot from Barracuda, it should be enough to kill off most of these carries. If not, you might need 2 shots from Barracuda. A lot of combo damage that is available for them and a lot of safety. I'm curious how the Warriors are going to try and tackle this. When your lockdown isn't enough, you need way more heavy CC.
You know, it feels bad now for the Oni Warriors is that the Bolts can effectively do what they want as long as they're playing around Venenu and as long as the Scylla is up in these fights. I mean, that full rotation onto effectively anyone at this point with the flat pen online for Ven should be doing a good chunk of damage. And for a minute there, Gore, the Oni Warriors were the ones invading that red buff, but no surprise now that the scales have been tipped a little bit with the way the last engagement went, that the Bolts are the ones finding the red buff invades. Crushes down, Neilma takes a whole lot of damage. I'm a Monster is there as well, and Awesome Jake in with the execute. The Olympus Bolts playing around this mid lane one more time.
I mean, locking down what was a pivotal pick for them in game number 1 as well, making sure that Neil isn't finding any good pushes. He's getting caught out in his own jungle. I mean, that's not a position, like, he wasn't out of position. The Bolts are just playing aggressive. Vote can't do anything from under his tower. The Bolts are looking in impeccable form this game. They've definitely turned around what was happening in game 1.
I was about to say maybe a chance for a return kill onto Awesome Jake, but who am I kidding? Jake can leap away, he can dash away, and Vote had already used his ultimate. Stygian Torment used by Nika as well, but just too slippery is this Sirket. So 104 for Awesome Jake, affecting 5 of the 6 kills, but Lasbra on the Camazotz score I think has been an unsung hero up to this point. 100% kill participation on this Camazotz. That's what the death said it needed to do, right? Let's impact this early game. Let's get off to a great start. Let's set up the rest of the team. And Lasbra has absolutely done that. A good opportunity, though, for the Oni Warriors to grab some experience and some gold around that red buff, take it away from Venenu, most notably. At least able to do that. What are expectations, though, from this point on? I mean, look, Dardes is 1 level down. He's got 1 death on the board, and that's about it. Chronos Pendant, Spear of the Magus. It's going to take a little bit, you imagine, for this Aphrodite to get to a point of relevance.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of sitting on and waiting for at this point. It's 4,000 gold separating the 2 teams, so that is a good lead, especially, look, 14 minutes in, that's a great lead for the Bolts. And they're able to turn that into Pyromancers, they're able to turn it into Furies when they're able to look at them. And so far, these fights have been really good. Camazotz doesn't, like, I don't think anybody on the Bolts falls off late game. In fact, if anything, they just keep getting better. But it's when the Warriors are able to match. That Aphrodite is the wild card because that amount of healing, depending on if there's a cursed Ankh, Jake still would be the one having to pick that up. Just tick over to 12, so should be able to pick that up soon. But your Pestilences, your Divine Ruins, your Brawlers, they're important.
Get back and Undying Love have to be used for Neilma here. Not ideal, but does save the life of their support.
And worth noting, and you can see it there, Jake's ult, 100% anti-heal. You literally can't heal during that, and you can see that happening to Neil. It's forcing them to play an awkward way around, so the Warriors are going to have to figure this out. Aphrodite feels like such an essential piece to this, especially having to pull Dardes away from like a damage carry role in order to play this more facilitator healer. And now with the Cursed Ankh available, I mean, Jake has 2 different forms of shutting down your healing. It's definitely going to take a heavy shift in the mentality for the Warriors to start tackling this.
And there's the Pestilence that we talked about earlier.
Yep.
And there's a Brawler's Beat Stick picked up for Lasbra. So anti-heal, a priority, and one that has been acted on by the Olympus Bolts. That'll keep the Oni Warriors behind. Here's what doesn't feel great. A moment ago, the damage charts were up. The combo that we talk about so often with this Aphrodite is Aphrodite plus Erlang Shen, like a chainsaw, difficult to deal with. What doesn't feel great is when that combo is on the bottom of the damage charts in the entire game. 1,300 for Kivo Fred. Dardes has 2,000. Lasbra not lighting things up, but still more damage by the factor of 2 to Kivo Fred. So not ideal when the combo that you want swinging, Gore, isn't doing much of it.
Not just not doing much. To highlight it even more, they combined are doing less damage than Jake is on the other side. Jake's at 34. They max together 3,300. Maybe you're not expecting a lot out of Dardes. Dardes has more damage than Kivo right now.
Going to be difficult to out-secure a Scylla especially when you're behind, and the Olympus Bolts prove that fact. The Oni Warriors, this is sometimes the opportunity where you can find a pick, maybe something like this. Awesome Jake back in on Nika. Taunt through from Cubo. Fred, you have spent so much to get the Circuit, and you're not able to do so if you're the Oni Warriors. Haddix re-engages, Pluck back onto Dardes, who does have Undying Love. Get back, put some damage onto Venenu, but Lazbra, the 2, 1, and 4 chainsaws join the fight. Haddix is the one who snags the kill onto Dardes. Numa left alone in the back. Barracuda getting involved as well. The Olympus Bolts making the Oni Warriors pay for stepping up.
So it turns out, you remember when I did the breakdown of how I thought this set was going to go? That's, at least for this game, that's pretty much the path of it.
Right.
10 minutes where it's kind of close,
Yep.
everything's right on the edge, and then the Bolts hit the 10-minute mark, and then for the next 15 minutes, at least so far in the next 7 minutes after that, they've just collapsed and controlled the Warriors in a way that they haven't really been able to do anything. They're corralling them exactly where they want to. I mean, you get both relics and the ult and the heal and everything out of Dardes, and it still doesn't really get too much done. You find a kill. You burn a lot in the process. I will give credit to the Warriors for that. A lot of relics are down on the Bolts as well as a lot of ults that were used.
Yep.
But they're coming out with 8 kills to 1 right now. They're 9,000 gold up. They just got another Pyromancer, 8,000 gold up. It is ridiculous how far ahead they are at this point. 17 minutes in, and I think that we really have to be playing the patient game. I think one good play from the Warriors gets them maybe back into this, especially when you look at the towers, all 6 still standing for the Bolts. But map state, way these neutral objectives have been going, a lot is going to need to change for the Warriors. It's going to need to change fast for them to have a good shot at winning this game.
Unfortunately for the Warriors, Gore, and I agree with you, the Bolts, a team that like to play aggressive, and it's so much better for them, of course, when they're ahead. I imagine you regroup, you spend some gold, you're probably sending it around the Fire Giant, see if you can find a fight, push this lead even further. Not the type of team to rest on their laurels. And why would you when the lead has been going the way that it is? You've got great objective secure with Venenu as well, so those 50-50s around objectives maybe don't feel quite as coin flippy. So a steal to get you back in the game feels much less likely than it normally would if you're the Oni Warriors. And I don't mind this. Why not? Let's group up in the jungle. Let's see if we can find a pick. We're so far ahead that you're probably favoring yourself in about every fight on the map right now.
And that's why I'm waiting, ever so patiently, but this Aphrodite just, it's taking to me like a Khepri, right? Where sometimes all it takes is just getting to the jungle fights, the 5-on-5s, where all of a sudden you're able to make a big difference. Dardes, again, it's only 0-2-0, but has been controlled in the last couple of engagements very well by the Bolts. Can they do it each time? I mean, all it takes is for Dardes to have one big impact heal, one big save, as well as Cuvo or Vote popping off to make a difference.
Felt like a matter of time until we saw the Olympus Bolts jump in. And it's Awesome Jake engaging on Neoma. In goes Cuvo Fred. Dardes linked up with the Erlang Shen. And that has forced the Bolts back, or a lot of damage connecting onto the carries of the Olympus Bolts. So maybe not as easy as I had figured.
Well, now Sovereignty has been finished for Dardes, so he's a little more survivable than before. That's kind of that's always that moment where the healers start to kind of strong arm their way right back in. It's when they pick up whatever prot item they're going to be picking up, and Hell will do it in Hell games. Afro can do it here. But again, it's kind of interesting to watch when you're looking at Cuvo, who's been teetering back and forth, a little aggressive, kind of not getting as much done. You had mentioned how late game last game he was more facilitator, more taunt, more knock-up, more can I find a pin to root somebody, not necessarily looking for the damage. And it came down to Vote's damage. That was the absolute end-all, be-all. Finished the chin size just now. He's still just a little behind Barra in terms of gold, and that is definitely starting to showcase one full bow ahead where Barra is. But at the same time, Heimdall, especially with his auto-attack chain, hits pretty hard, and the longer this game goes on, I think the closer it gets, despite the fact that it is a massive gold lead for the Bolts, I think it does start to really start to shift over towards the Warriors, at least a little bit more than what we've seen so far.
Yeah, in Hunter, it's about a 1.2k gold differential. Gore and mid, we're like that 2.5, 3,000 gold that Venenu is ahead of Dardes, and just look at that
Three
build.
levels.
I mean, look at the build, and you're right, the XP that has just now been closed down to 2 as Dardes is leveled up. Divine Ruin, Spear of Desos we've talked about, but then you got Soul Reaver and Obshard on the other end. I don't think there's a bad target for Venenu to be looking at right now.
And you had mentioned it earlier, but even watching the positioning, like the Warriors flood in, they get the vision around the Gold Fury, and I think if it spawns a hair faster, they start it up. But you always have to keep your eye and mind on this Scylla. Knowing that ult is available, knowing at any given time, like you had mentioned, you're not going to out-secure a Scylla, at least not in any way that Vin should be allowing you. Crush should be able to do it, but also I'm a Monster is going to be more than enough for a lot of these objectives. And that's where a lot of, I want to say that it just falters for the Warriors. You can be as ever-present, you could win this next fight, and it all comes down to how much pressure you can get on Vin. If you move him away from the objective, or straight up kill him, so far they haven't been able to do that one. Either way, that's going to be a huge win for them, even if that's all they walk away with. You might not even get the Gold Fury. As long as you can just kill a carry, I think you're in a much better spot. But you're right on that edge. And it's weird to say that when there's 7,000 gold separating these two teams, but you still can fight into this.
You can. The Oni Warriors always have that opportunity, but in moments like this, I think they gotta not worry about the Fury. You're not gonna out-secure Veneno. You gotta worry about the fight instead, and unfortunately, that's not looking much better, but look at Neoma, he's disrupted that backline. I'm a Monster has been used by Veneno, and it didn't find anything there either. Snipes from Barracuda can spread some discourse in the backline. Dardes doing his best to run away, but it'll get taunted right back through from Awesome Jake. Great stun, but Haddix is having none of it. Dardes down first for 45 seconds.
And that's just such a good target call. Lasbra might even be able to continue getting aggressive. He's got Haddix to help him.
Oh, and Vode and Neoma are both low in the safe haven of the Tier 2 tower. Isn't feeling so safe. The tick damage from Lasbro get him on the killing spree. He's tanking up that tower. Haddix a bit of an overstay. 2 for 1 by the end of it. Not as clean as the Bolts would have liked, but still a fight win.
Well, Cuvo's still full health. Nika is still around. I don't know if this is anything you can work with. Not at least enough to get as aggressive. The biggest play for the Warriors ends up being the fact that Vin ends up missing. Still isn't enough to pull things back over in their favor. But I think showcases a little bit more, and specifically it showcases the Bolts' target prioritization and how good they are at executing on it. I mean, they called out Dardes. Dardes didn't get to breathe in that fight. He ults. Barra is waiting for the snipes. He comes out of that, tries to heal. Oh, immediately as he comes out of his ult, Curse Ankh comes and hits him. Jake was making sure that Dardes could not exist. And the same for the rest of the Bolts. They locked him down and isolated him. And once the Afro's gone, a lot of this team, while it is still similar pieces to before, isn't hitting as hard and doing as much as last time. They don't have the overwhelming advantage they did in game.
Right. Big that the I'm a Monster damage from Veneno didn't connect. You imagine that fight feels a lot more comfortable. Had Veneno hit that ultimate. Another chance for Ven here in this jungle fight around the Gold Fury. Neoma doing what he does best, disrupting that backline, but right out of left stage, Neoma comes running back across the screen. Barracuda sends some snipes Dardes' way. Bit of a split engagement here. Gore taunt from Cubo Fred puts Awesome Jake in an awkward spot. Vote dashes away on one side. Cubo Fred running away on the other. The Oni Warriors have survived for the time being.
But it feels just so small, and they use 4 ults. Granted, they take 4 ults in the process, but you really
Cubo
are
Fred.
Just constantly on the back.
Cubo Fred is around the backside. Olympus Bolts secure the Gold Fury as you would expect. No, I'm a Monster to secure it, but this is sometimes what you see from the Warriors. You'll push through after a secured objective, sick them from the Scylla, so not the ability you would expect to secure it. Does end up securing the Gold Fury nonetheless.
No, don't do that. Never
Are you calling for it, or are you assuming they would? They will start the Pyro, the Oni Warriors will. FG would have been risky,
If they had been
and they won't roll those dice.
like if they could run at 1.5 speed and gotten to the Fire Giant like
They
just
might
2 or 3 seconds
if they go back,
earlier.
the Bolts can start it, right? I mean, if,
Well,
if
that's
enough people
what I
go
was
back,
thinking for the Bolts was they all back away from that Fury, and my mindset is immediately, okay, cool, now you can run over. Again, if you're a little faster in the Warriors, which is move speed,
Right.
that's nothing they could control. And maybe they could have started it up, but now it's the same position, just reversed.
Vote hasn't been able to go back. 1.5k gold on that Heimdall. You would have liked to have spent it before this fight. The Olympus Bolts were able to go back, and they regroup around this FG. They get it beneath half HP, the Bolts do, but won't end up committing any further onto it. It is reset, and the Oni Warriors will not have the Fire Giant snuck away.
And you have to think, look, it's almost, well, now it's back down to about 8,000 gold separating these teams. They are not playing like it. I mean, the Warriors are not playing like a team that only has 2 kills. They're not playing like a team that is down essentially a full tier 3 item in every single role. They are playing this very well, and they're forcing things. Beads just now used from Lasbra.
That's a win.
It's these little skirmishes, especially if Dardes can survive the way he did last time. that is going to escalate them. Having that healing changes the way the fight flows.
Duo Fred blinks in, finds a knock upon Elasbro. The taunt is there as well. Bat out of hell always is going to get used there. It's a bit of a grouping here from the Oni Warriors. Can he get the kill on Awesome Jake? Yes, he can, but Venenu on a killing spree as the I'm a Monster takes for 2, gets damage onto 3. It's a triple kill from Venenu. Neilma spinning around in the back will shut down the mid lane, or at least gets 1, but it's a massive fight from the Scylla, and the Olympus Bolts come up big. Venenu comes up big with 3.
I mean, a 2 for 4, and now Nika just forced to run away could end up being the deicide, just a little shy there for Haddock's not going to be able to get the plug. Gets the blink, though, and still should feel accomplished. Not a position where you can find too much after the fact. Look at everything on the board for the Bolts. Maybe, actually, with Lasbro, Haddock's available. It's going to take a little bit of time for them to get over to the Fire Giant, make that stroll. In that time, the Warriors are going to have to wait to respawn. Vin is the wild card here. 20 seconds. They could start up the FG and hold it just enough to be able to make sure he gets the buff.
Right, and so I now want to see if the Oni Warriors...
They're going to beeline for it.
Try to. They are. This is going down quickly. I don't know if the timing works out here for the Oni Warriors, especially not if Awesome Jake is going to be in range as well. Yeah, just a bit too slow on the rotations, I assume, from the Oni Warriors here. Awesome Jake is in there to split out as well. Venenu respawns and grabs the FG. All 5 members of the Olympus Bolts have themselves a Fire Giant. 3 Tier 2 towers stand, and the Oni Warriors are on defense.
And you have to look at the positioning. I mean, first off, I'm a Monster over the wall, perfectly timed, but it's the pluck back. That is why a Scylla... Sobek, a Scylla, anybody displacement combo is going to be too much. And it's just a hair shy of being a quadra kill and Vin still being alive after that fight. I think good on Neil to ult and make sure to put that pressure onto the Scylla, but it is so close for being essentially an in-game state for the Olympus Bolts. Whereas right now they do still have a little bit more work they have to do. I think that is just a good play, and if they can't get back to there to stop the Scylla faster, it's going to happen again.
And doesn't it feel like the big difference, because that's a sweeping team fight win from the Bolts that hadn't happened yet. You know, the Bolts were coming out ahead 2-1, things like that. And Venenu, whether it's his fault or just good positioning from the Oni Warriors, had been missing the Ima Monsters around those Furies. The Ima Monsters hadn't been hitting for big chunks of damage. And when they start hitting, you see how those team fights go. And the Oni Warriors learned that the hard way. Venenu, some massive damage in that last fight. 17,000 damage is top in the game. You're not thrilled if you're the Oni Warriors that your Kuzenbo is on top of your on the top of your damage charts, and still your mid and jungle are trying to climb up things down towards the bottom. They've at least surpassed Awesome Jake on this Circuit. But you're going to need that and then some gore against this Olympus Bolts Phoenix Siege, and that Siege is coming soon.
And honestly, Lazarus is just playing distraction. I mean, there's 3 members of the Warriors over in mid right now. Not enough of an opening for the Bolts to get aggressive. They still have to wait on the minions, but this is a beautiful spot to be in. Barra has his ult, Vin has his ult, and they both got their relics up. Maybe give it 8 more seconds for Barra to have the Aegis, and then they're going to be more than happy to hold on to this and continue their push.
And so we will take a quick breather, Gore, as we enter a pause here in game number 2. So all signs pointing towards a game number 3, right? I mean, it looks like the Olympus Bolts are barreling their way towards a game 2 win here. And what a difference just a slight pivot in the mid lane and the team composition makes here for the Bolts. Venenu, not completely out of game number 1, but at the absolute forefront of game 2 here. The Scylla has made an absolute world of difference, and the Warriors haven't had an answer.
Well, and a huge playstyle shift as well, right? I mean, 10 minutes in, we're looking at Barra down 0-4 in game number 1, right? Yep. They were focusing heavily over there. Game number 2, I'm still waiting to see Cuvo get a little more active in it.
Right.
Like, he's been getting good taunts, some good pins that have been thrown out there, but it hasn't been anywhere near the level of what we saw in Game 1 and kind of what I was expecting here in Game 2. Aphrodite has been a big target for them. The minute Dardes goes down, it feels like all the wind gets taken out from their sails, so they have to figure it out for this fight.
We rejoin the game, and what looks like a Phoenix defense that's not feeling great for the Oni Warriors. Lasbra hunts down Neilma for the first kill here, but the health bars not full for the Olympus Bolts right now. Vote the worst person to be locked into place will dash back into base. Cubo Fred left alone. Haddix picks that one up. And now it's Nika plus carries defending the left side Phoenix.
And this is going to get taken down, no problem. 3 people
They're
left,
gonna
a
keep
healer.
going.
You got a Heimdall, but look, I mean, the health bars for the Bolts have gotten back up. Jake, maybe a little too low.
Yeah, the only Warriors in an okay
This is
position
scary.
to defend the base here. Haddix is stunned down. A great kill opportunity for the Warriors that they do not miss. The doors will be opened. Venenu and Barracuda will back on out. Does Nika hit the all-important stun here? No beads for Lasbra. No bubble either. Leap on away, avoids the crush damage. Awesome Jake, now the one jumping on away. The only Warrior, they don't want to let the Olympus Bolts back just yet, but look at the health bars. They have fully topped off, and now the Olympus Bolts can turn the tides. Vote deleted on the back line. Now Nika will take the Undying Love, get back from Dardes, takes Barracuda off the playing field. Awesome Jake dashes away, but Lasbra is still swinging.
I mean, they're just trying to get something, but Nika's caught out.
Lasbra with a triple kill. Everyone from the Bolts getting involved with the multi-kills. Neuma, the last one in. Cubo Fred has just respawned. Can you catch up with Awesome Jake? Correctly avoiding
Jake
that
goes
crush.
in.
Jake goes back in. Neuma gets the kill on the Venenu. Did the Thor, did the bounce back damage get it done there? So there's no more Ven. You lose a left side Phoenix score, but the only Warriors get a few kills in return.
I mean, that's just classic anti-Scylla from Neil. Hey, I'm going to pop the thorns in my 2, and you're going to kill yourself using my shell. It's, I mean, a good play, honestly, from the Warriors more than anything. They lost a lot of people, but I mean, what else did they have to lose? You're either throwing away your life or you're throwing away the game. There's not many ways that you're supposed to fight back from that one. So they managed to maintain that. They do kill off Barra. They kill off Vin, although they don't do so by burning any of his relics. Barra still has 30 seconds and a minute on the beads and the Aegis, respectively. But I don't know if that counts as a big win for the Warriors at all. I think it counts. I was going to say it counts as a loss for the Bolts. But I think it's just neutral for the Warriors. You get some good kills, but it doesn't really amount to anything. There's nothing on the map you're able to get. You're really just able to push things back and away from the rest of the team and delay the Bolts out a little bit more. What could have been an in-game has now bought you a few more minutes. EFG is available for them. I mean, I'm going to keep it open. The Warriors are in this position. Not a great one, but in a position where they're going to be able to fight back. If they can, is much more of a long shot.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. And a lot of it, Gore, I think. Now Dardes catching back up a little bit in the damage category. Rod of Tahuti is there, but Venenu's also got one, and then also an extra Ob Shard, and also a Soul Reaver. And so Scylla's got to be that target, and Vote has got to go big, but Vote can't go big because he's not on this side of the map. Dardes uses the Undying Love. That'll avoid the I'm a Monster, but time's out in time for Lasbra to swoop back through. He's got 5 kills in the last couple of fights, and it could get worse for the Oni Warriors. Barracuda's low. Neuma has been the saving grace for this Oni Warriors team. Vote looked at by all of the Bolts. He'll have to dash away from this fight. Barracuda's low in this one as well. Vote being chased down by Haddix and Awesome Jake as well. Venenu gets rid of Neil. Haddix gets rid of Vote. It's the deicide in the game in all likelihood for the Bolts in game 2.
I mean, there's no way that they're going to end up, well, look, what, 30 seconds? Yeah, there's no way that things
I
are
thought for a
going
moment
to
they
end
were
up
turning
slipping.
back to the FG, and I was like, really? We're doing this?
You need an enhanced FG for it? I mean, they are pretty low.
No,
they're trying
they
to
got
open
it.
up the
I
door
thought
for
there was a brief moment of hesitation where I wasn't quite sure, but the Bolts make the right call here. They deicide the Oni Warriors, and it felt, Gore, it felt like a matter of time, right? There was some pushback from the Oni Warriors, but how many times was it Neuma alone?
Yes.
At the end of the
How
fight,
many
right?
times was it
every single
Neuma?
fight. It felt like, and the Kuzumbo was able to survive as Kuzumbo does, but that burst damage, the target selection, as you pointed out, perfect from the Bolts here in game 2.
I mean, replay the last fight. Look at who's the first one to go down. It's Dardes. They forced the Undying Love. Didn't even get a chance to pop the Aegis in that engagement because the minute Undying Love was down, they burst him as fast as they could. And that was the focus for the Bolts. It was too much, the Scylla and the Rom, and there just wasn't enough damage on the other side. Cuvo wasn't providing it, and you weren't getting as much bang out of Vote as we did in game number 1. So his damage, while it was good, wasn't enough on its own.
Gore, phase 3 gets interesting right off the bat. A game 3 between the Oni Warriors and the Olympus Bolts coming up next. You don't want to miss it. We'll see you soon.
I want to take off my jacket for this one. Oh, weird. Dude, this... No, I know he was supposed to take you out last weekend, but he got busy.
Why didn't you call? So many years has gone by, but I think about you all the time. Looks like you're changing and all, but why didn't you call? Something in the air, always something in the air. Inexplicable, I can feel it in the air. Can you feel
Well, what a way to kick off the third phase of the SPL with none other than a Game 3 in our second set of the phase, as the Olympus Bolts are able to close out game number 2 and bring us to this momentous occasion. One thing you don't have to wait on, though, is your chance of getting some SPL merchandise. You can go to thanks to our sponsor, Insight. You can go to shop.smiteproleague.com, pick up all things SPL related, whether it's shirts, shorts, sleeves, sweaters, anything. I ran out of S's for it immediately off the top of my head. I was going to see how many I can get, but it seems 4 was my limit for it, but
Socks.
Can you get socks there?
No, but you didn't say like it had to be true.
Okay. Well, it's things that they can buy thanks to inside at shop.smiteproleague.com. You can't get socks there. Maybe that could be something for maybe a future that we could go through. You can't get shoes there either.
Well, look, man, I'm listing S's.
Those are S's that you can list off, correct? Although they wouldn't be factual
Slays.
correct. They wouldn't be correct factual. What?
Slays.
Slays.
Like, so you can like go down a hill. Oh,
Okay,
it's a sled?
sleighs. I thought you were saying more like sleighs that you can buy. Like I don't know where I was going with that one. Speaking of sleighs, though, it is the Olympus Bolts getting a nice little slaying victory here in game number 2, able to take down the Oni Warriors, and a lot of that coming off the very first blood that came through for the Olympus Bolts through that jungle and mid lane combo.
Yeah, I mean, the Bolts they woke up. That's the only way I can describe it. It felt like Ven was playing a lot more confidently this time around. I mean, he legitimately walked in at like the 6-minute mark and solo invaded a red buff and forced the enemy mid laner to retreat back. The Bolts were playing much more concisely. It felt like they were playing with more confidence. The team fight was a lot cleaner, and I'm trying my best to talk around the issue because Ven is the issue. He did kind of like everything for his squad this game, but I'm going to give some credit to Haddix, who's setting up a lot of the plays with Sobek. A little S there for you. And I really think that Jake had a great performance on their Circuit as well. Barracuda, I think, essentially does his job in the P's and B's just by taking away the ROM from Vote, not to just slate his performance. He also has a very good performance on this ROM, but I don't think he needed to. It was overkill if Barracuda was doing something good because Ven was out there dominating the battleground.
Some great Sickums by Scylla, 2 more S's, and a solid Circuit play, 2 more there on S's out of Awesome Jake.
A lot of S's.
We'll go ahead and start with the S gag, although we'll probably end up bringing it back. But, I mean, this play right here, we were sitting back in the room, we were watching that, and being able to get a double reset with I'm a Monster and then slamming for another 1,200 plus damage. I mean, if you forgot how hard I'm a Monster hit, here's a good showcase and a good reminder as to what a Scylla is able to do if she is allowed to get to these later stages of the game. 27,000 damage to close it out.
Sheesh.
The next closest one was Vote with 25,000 damage on his team. But when you're looking at a mage, Scylla specifically for this mage, able to put out that level of damage with basically no major threat to her, not looking so high, but luckily for them, they still have a game 3 where they can try and maybe correct some of those mistakes from game 2.
Yeah, I think it was a huge loss on the mid laner there. Going towards the Aphrodite was useful to help out with a dive and decent survivability, but not having that consistent source of damage inside of the team fight really did affect the Oni Warriors negatively, so I'm expecting a little bit more standard in the draft from them this time around.
Maybe the Tiamat that we didn't see
I'd
at
love
all.
that.
Well, not picked, not banned, and I'm going to go ahead and say it, although I probably can't be correct. I don't think picked or banned in either of these 2 games so far by either team. So it's not just one team is ignoring it. It's neither of these teams are looking at this mid laner, where in weeks prior, in games prior, she was #1 ban. You got to take it away instantly. If not, you pick it up immediately. I'm just kind of baffled by the fact that Tiamat's not even being looked at by these teams.
Yeah, in the last phase, phase 2, she was the most banned god and also the most first-picked god, and now in phase 3, going a little bit by the wayside inside of this set. I don't expect that trend to continue throughout the entirety of the SPL, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see her just kind of be forgotten here in Game 3 as well.
We'll see what happens with picks and bans for game number 3. See how everything falls into place for these teams. Oni Warriors, probably a team not expected to bring a Game 3 to the Bolts of all teams through here, especially with how well the Bolts performed in Phase 2, even coming into the playoffs here. But now we got to see a little bit of what the Bolts can do in that second game. Now let's see if the Warriors can bring back what they had in game number 1 against this team.
Yeah, and I'm also running back at the commentary in my own head here as we jump into picks and bans. Lasbra went 9-1, by the way. Yeah, we didn't talk about that enough. He has a phenomenal performance on this Kamazot. It's just great initiation, goes into the back line, dives the Phoenix. Even on that last Phoenix Siege was the one to find that initial pick and then disengage with the bat out of hell. So I think that might be one pick the only Warriors are going to keep their heads on.
They can keep. They just need to be paying attention to it more than anything. Look at it. Maybe ban it. You never know. Maybe pick it for yourself. There's plenty of options available to it. Before the first round of bans, as they start to come through, we'll probably see a little bit of the same that we have so far. In fact, we will with, again, 2 for 2 on the startup, make it 3 for 3. We'll go ahead and I'll spare you the counting game for it again, but same bans that we've been seeing across the board so far for both of these teams. Nothing has changed so much. It's only been this third ban by the Bolts that have made an adjustment from Game 1 and Game 2. I don't think we'll see anything different from game number 3, and it will not. It will be another Morrigan ban here for the Bolts in their third slot.
So we'll see how the Oni Warriors decide to address that one, and it's going to stay largely the same. Hell, taken off the table, and the Bolts, well, they can go exactly where they have gone every single time here. But we'll wait. I'm going to play the waiting game. I'm not going to make any predictions here. No assumptions. The Olympus Bolts could go towards the Tiamat. Artemis is available, but instead, it's going to be the Circuit locked in yet again. Last time around, that was awesome. Jake piloting this god, but that is not to take away from the flex potential. Could have head over into the jungle if the Olympus Bolts so choose, just to keep the Oni Warriors on their toes. And the Oni Warriors don't need to be on their toes. Instead, very swiftly going back towards that tried and true Cerberus and Erlang Shen, the first two selected.
Now, I was going to ask, maybe do the Oni Warriors change up here and with the Cerberus, maybe change out their long chin to grab something for Vote early on, get him a top 3 hunter right away, but instead they go with the same first 3 that have been from last game with the Cerberus or long shin. Circuit on the other side of it. It is Rom and Sobek once again for the Bolts. So they lock in the same top 3. In this last slot, it was an Aphrodite, but this time they're going to grab the Kuzin bow for Neil. How do you feel about getting all of the front line ahead for the Warriors going into this this next ban phase compared to having one of their carries?
I just think that they could have been well suited by picking up a carry, man. I mean, not to beat a dead horse, but I'm gonna. Tiamat, Persephone, all available. Morgan Le Fay, Artemis,
Raijin.
I mean, there's a lot of viable hyper carries still available on the table, but neither team keeping their eyes towards it. And I'd expect the Bolts to do exactly what they did in Game 2 with this second phase of bans and say, hey, Vote kind of hard carried Game 1. Let's go ahead and target him inside of the bans. Artemis taken off the table here by the Olympus Bolts, and maybe a Heimdall or something along those lines with that second ban as the Oni Warriors kind of put their eyes on the jungle. They're saying this Circuit almost guaranteed headed towards support, so Camazotz and Osiris taken off the table.
But it is one of those situations where that you pick this Circuit, you have that flexibility, but knowing that both Lasber and Jake play it, do you think that this is the Oni Warriors forcing that Circuit to maybe go jungle so now they can do something different, or are they just expecting and 100% believing that this Circuit is going to be going the way of support?
I think it is just they're saying, hey, the 408's going to play it, man. Let's make sure that Lasber isn't looking good on one of these other picks. That's essentially the vibe I'm getting, but I mean, we could have got bamboozled. Could be Sobek support. Could be Circuit inside of the jungle. And the Oni Warriors could have just wasted 2 bans. Hard to say as of right now. The Olympus Bolts are the only ones who have got that knowledge as of this point. Barracuda having a little bit of fun with his cat, making sure he doesn't get distracted in this dire Game 3 situation. We'll see if more changes here in the second phase of picks. The Olympus Bolts, though, they're biding their time. They're waiting it out.
Why are we coming back to us when there's a cat on screen? We could have been seeing more Barracuda and his cat, but I mean, okay,
well, he
fine.
put it in like the little cat cave.
Right, but I mean, the cat was still there. It's not. We see so many cat towers of the pro players, but so few actual cats on screen. So getting to see one is a bit of a treat for it. Speaking of a treat, Vote going to be going back to Izanami this time around for his third game. 3 games, 3 different gods. With all due respect, though, he's kind of been taken away from some of those other 2. It was a Discordia for that last god banned away by the Bolts, and now the option goes back to the Bolts. They need to pick up their mid laner and potentially pick up their jungler here if this Circuit is not going the way of Lasbra. If it is, then they might be looking for either their support or their solo lane. A lot of flexibility here with this early draft from the Bolts.
Here's the thing about how Tiamat, Morgan Le Fay, Persephone, Raijin, Merlin are all available. They are.
Right.
But Nemesis being hovered right now.
But none of them are going to be looked at.
No, we're not concerned about it, okay? 8.8 balance, bonus balance, has shifted the meta clearly here inside of the SBL because none of those gods are being looked at as of right now. Instead, it's going to be a Scylla locked in yet again. And if you're going to be slamming like consistent 5,000 damage per team fight on Scylla, I'm not going to argue with it. I'll go ahead and let that one get locked in yet again. I think that the Olympus Bolts have got an incredibly strong draft here that performs very similarly to what we saw in Game 2, whereas the Oni Warriors have got a similar draft in that they can establish pressure just about anywhere on the map, but maybe even more so now that they've got a more traditional mage out of mid. Izanami's going to be able to control the long lane pressure just by piercing auto attacks. Erlang Shen, probably the strongest early game pick on the map right now, and then you've got Cerberus and Kuzenbo flanking him as well. This is an incredibly aggressive W key composition from the Oni Warriors, and the Bolts, they're just playing tried and true classic OG vintage SMITE. I mean, it's just SMITE here. You got a hyper carry out of mid, some facilitators, a standard assassin. Things are looking good for him.
So it's interesting to note here with the Warriors, though. All 3 of these games, they've had the same 3 picks consistently throughout it. Cerberus, Erlang Shen, Kuzenbo. Those haven't changed whatsoever. It's always been these 2 carry spots that have been changing around. Comparing the Game 1 draft here of their 2 carries to throwing this Izanami Hera, how does this kind of stack up comparatively to go up against this Scylla and Rom that's been drafted by the Bolts?
Well, I mean, I would say Izanami is kind of doing similar stuff to Rom inside the lane in that she also pierces the wave. She also has very strong clear. The 1v1 advantage probably going to go the way of Izanami. And then the Hera-Scylla matchup, kind of not really a matchup. Most mid-mages aren't really fighting each other. The only one who's kind of getting aggressive inside the lane is generally going to be like Raijin, who can use Thunderclap to close gap and then just kind of DPS race whoever he's on top of. Hera and Scylla kind of have to play a little bit further back, going to be more reliant on their supports once they rotate out, or the junglers once they join them. So instead, you have to evaluate that late game presence. And with Ven doing as much damage and having as good a performance as he did in game 2 on this Scylla, I've got to put a little bit of credence his way. But there's a reason this Hera gets banned out so consistently against the Oni Warriors, so I'm excited to see how that one lines up. It's going to have decent self-peel. You got the HP shield. You've got your bubble buddy inside of Argus, always going to be there and make sure at least one frontliner is with you. You can spawn them up yourself. And then you've got Polymorph just to make sure that Nemesis isn't quite able to just sit on you in the back line without having to dedicate at least beads or maybe a Magi's Blessing inside of the build.
Kind of talking about late game, we kind of just grazed past the fact that there is even a Nemesis in this game for the Olympus Bolts. We'll see how this Nemesis stacks up. Can the Bolts bring it back here and take game 3, or will the Oni Warriors punch back? Well, let's jump right into the game and see what happens.
For one final time, Dolson, Gormizer, and Doug will be putting into the action, and that's action that is starting off at 15 seconds, minus 15 seconds. And the Olympus Bolts able to get first blood, and it is Lasbra starting it off. Neilmont didn't even give us a second to think about it. Horrible start for the Oni Warriors here. 500 gold lead for the Olympus Bolts as the clock strikes 0.
You know what? I don't know what to say. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't know what, other than,
there's not a lot to break down.
You got first blood, and you got it on your jungler. You used 2 blinks in the process, but you're not going to need them for a little while. So I think there's
game over, right?
About as simple as it can get. That's a good start for the Bolts.
Yeah, I mean, it's game over. I mean, there's no way the Oni Warriors climb out of this one. I'm kidding, of course. But it's a fantastic start for Lasbra, who now has that extra bit of gold, can get ahead in this jungle matchup now. Once you go back to base, you'll be able to hit those power spikes a little bit quicker. Neilmont not necessarily behind just yet. Depends how the rest of this lane goes. I think important pivots, though, Gore, for the Oni Warriors here going into game 2. The Aphrodite just didn't hit that mark for me. I think Dardes going to the Hera, that's a comfort pick for Dardes, is a great change here for the Oni Warriors.
Yeah, that Aphrodite really didn't do it for me, man. It was not enough in terms of healing. It was not enough in terms of pressure. And I think that realistically switching to the Hera is going to be helpful. There's just nothing you can do about this one.
Neil's just jumping along, having fun, waltzing through the jungle. Is that as BM as breaking a jump party in Assault?
Nah.
No? Because that's actually, like, tactical. This is tactical, I mean.
No, what's BM is oh, man, how many weeks ago was it when we saw people running in? Oh, it was someone on Ratatoskr running into the Invader's Curse. You remember that?
It was PBM
it was
playing
so obnoxiously
support,
slow.
I think.
Yeah, that's BM if you get a kill on top of it.
That was so funny.
But, things like that, like, it's one of those interesting moments because you know where wards are trying to be placed early on in the game. Most of the time, if you try that, you're maybe not going to be able to get a kill, or you're committing everybody on the one side where it's not going to amount to much. They're lucky enough that they're able to not only get the kill there, but then lock down, go back, get all their buffs on cooldown, and find enough experience. But what's interesting to me, Neil and Vote still hit 2 before for Jake and Barra did. They still hit 3 before Jake and Barra did. I mean, despite the fact that you've got what should have been a nice lead for them, it's kind of amounted to nothing just a couple minutes later.
Right,
Just
the gold differential that is around 300 for the Bolts is made up entirely of that first blood. Opportunity for Cuvo Fred here on the Erlong Shen once again. Ward coverage was there a moment ago for the Olympus Bolts, but may have fallen off since. And this pressure will open up the doors to a purple buff invade. Cuvo Fred getting active early and keeping this dual lane ahead despite Neilma dying at negative 15 seconds.
And I got to give him credit, man. That was the thing that was missing from Cuvo last time around. I don't know if I saw him go to the duo lane, let alone if he was able to get an invade or a good gank off. Whereas in Game 1, he at least showed presence over there several times. So I like the fact that they are putting the pressure on Cuvo and Neil, recognizing they can just be bullies. I mean, you're Erlong and Kuzenbo. Just go and kind of strong arm them out of there.
And there's still a lead, and not still. There's been a small lead built up in the mid lane here as well. So the Oni Warriors, although a rough start for Neilma, have been just fine in the early parts of this laning phase. I think this dynamic Gore in the mid lane now between Venenu and Dardez is going to be so interesting because it feels like a lot of that Scylla lead, good early fights, but then Venenu just kind of was able to do whatever he wanted. I mean, the Crush was dealing so much damage to Dardez on the Aphrodite. Venenu was solo invading the red buff, little things like that. And Dardez on the Hera, it feels like just the presence of Hera over something like the Aphrodite is enough to stop that lead from building up in the same way for Venenu.
Especially when you start to think about where their issues were last time. They were not touching Vin or Barra, and they were always getting dove. Dardez was never safe. Vote was never really safe either, but specifically Dardez had all of what, well, not necessarily a negative impact on the team, but was not able to do anything. Try diving a Hera. Good luck with
no,
it.
That's
just
okay.
try diving
I don't
a Hera.
want to do that.
Polymorphed, she's going to shield herself up. She's going to be safe. Hey, guess what? You need to get to the back line? Drop Argus.
Yep.
It's going to distract somebody. It's either distracting the front line or it's getting to the back line. Either way, I think this is a great shift in the dynamic for the Warriors, and I'm excited to watch it because, like you said, this is kind of a staple for Dardez. It's been one of the more signature picks that we've gotten to see over the few years.
I do wonder as well, though, Gore, because there is a pivot for the Olympus Bolts in the jungle. Lasbra had been on the Osiris, and then the Kamazots in the last game. Now you're over on the Nemesis. I was going to ask specifically about how it would look, but having to use the double dash away from this Argus now definitely does not feel great. Argus is going to chase Lasbra to the ends of the earth, but really what this is buying is space for a red buff invade now for the Oni Warriors. Venenu will deal the last bit of damage, get Argus back on cooldown. Neilma picks up the red buff here. It's a push onto Awesome Jake, and the ultimate from Neilma, disrupting not much because the I'm a Monster from Venenu sets up that kill. It's Awesome Jake who gets it. Still not ideal for the Oni Warriors, but could have been worse if one of the other carries picked up the kill.
That's the patented combo from last time as well. You've got Jake, you've got Haddix in the late game that are going to be able to lock people down, pluck them very easily into Venenu's giant circle ultimate that is going to be a good amount of damage. It just makes it so much easier for Vin's life. You heard the Emma Monster pop not too long after the red buff went down, and it's just who's going to commit it, who's going to lock him down. You've got a slow as well from Lasbra, maybe not the end-all be-all, but still something that makes it easier to connect the Emma Monster. If the Scylla is able to maneuver around the way that they were in Game 2, Vin is going to have just as good a game because of the setup that's around it.
It's good for the Bolts, though. You got to push this lead now a little bit. I say lead in kills, yeah, and gold, not really. It's about a 500 gold lead still for the Oni Warriors. Dardez makes up a little bit of that in the mid lane, has the 1-level lead. Vote as well has the 1-level lead over Barracuda. So really maybe it's the Oni Warriors that still have the opportunity to push things a little bit further forward here. Bit of a difference in the mid lane, Gore. Venenu liked Flat Pen, Divine Ruin, Spear of Deso, and then I think Soul Reaver was third. Conduit Gem first item. Dardez, bit of a different mindset here. Ramp Shroud into the Chronos Pendant. Seems like already, though, both mid laners able to do some decent damage. Might need to here if a jungle skirmish breaks out. The push from Neilma out and away from Volt's ultimate. Not sure would have gotten the kill onto Awesome Jake anyway, but nothing else. Serket leaps away, forced out of the fight.
And gets a nice deep vision ward as well. They're going for a purple buff, or at least that's the ideal goal. Lasbra's here, Bear's here, Jake's ready to rotate in. It looks like that's all she wrote. No, they're going to engage.
It's an engage, and it's on to Cubo Fred, but Neoma doing what Neoma does best on this pick, keeping the back line out of the fight.
Oh!
Cubo Fred not able to dodge all three. Barracuda hits them all, and Barracuda picks up the 3rd kill of the game for the Olympus Bolts. Kills pretty evenly spread out for the Olympus Bolts as well. Lasber gets pulled right back in, and the Oni Warriors get a much-needed kill secure on the back end of that fight.
Yeah, keeping it 1-for-1 jungle for jungle. I will say, flashier from the Bolts. They get style points. Doesn't amount to anything in game, but whenever you hit all 3 ROM snipes onto a target, it feels good.
Does feel
and you
good.
can tell that Barra is going to be happy about that one. I think that is where a lot of this comes down to it. Again, I highlighted this last time, but between Vin and Barra, there's a lot of initial burst or kill capabilities on the side of the Bolts. Ideally, you know, with I'm a Monster, you're getting a kill, reset, kill,
Right.
reset.
That's a good point.
But, you know, Barra has so much damage in this ult that it just creates so many opportunities for the Bolts to turn nothing into something. And I think that's going to be a problem for the Warriors to face throughout all of this. Dardes, along with the Argus, along with the taunt that Cubo's going to bring, Vote a little bit later with the Giant Silence. There's a lot of open opportunities for the Warriors there as well. But the scary engage from the Bolts is really what has my eye.
Absolutely. Set up or secure between Barracuda and Venenu. Or onto the Oracles here, I guess. Venenu's going back to base, so no big problem. I imagine Ven will keep going towards this Deso, the Divine Ruin, the Deso build that worked so well. Enchanted Spear, I think, confirms a little bit of that. I wonder, though, if the Oni Warriors score, they continue to put pressure on the red buff, on the purple buff, because that's been where a lot of these fights have broken out. It's been these left side of the map jungle camps. Looks like Vote and Neoma were hoping that the purple buff would be up right now, but that also is what opened up the door to that kill for the Olympus Bolts. You got to be careful about telegraphing those invades effectively on cooldown.
And you can see deep wards, like they can see where Lasber is right now. They know where Jake is standing. They know the cooldowns on these buffs because they've been participating in them being dropped. And that's where that experience lead has come from. But like you said, sometimes it's just one throw away from dying.
The answer is yes, the Oni Warriors will try. The answer is no, we won't let you from the Olympus Bolts. Awesome Jake sends Neoma to the grave. And purple buff secured
I
by
don't
the
think
Olympus
that could have
Bolts.
happened better for us as we were
No, that
talking
was
about it. Like,
fantastic.
that was perfect.
Well, it all started when we were talking about the Osiris in Game 1. Venenu jumped on by Nika, Dardes, and Cubo Fred, and there's no real chance for the Scylla to get out of that fight. Venenu was chosen to die, and die Ven did. So now Nika's rotated out Gore. A couple of kills for the Cerberus, a couple of assists, of course, for Dardes, who has affected them. Vote jumped on by Lasbra. Awesome Jake wants more, though. It's a jump underneath the Tier 2 tower. Oh, Dark Portal nearly gets it. One more from Barra. Neilma's got to finish off this kill. Come on, Nene. Come on, minions. Give it to someone, and it's Neilma who picks it up.
He was trying to buy just enough time to maybe get that assist counter away or the kill counter there for Neilma. Unfortunate, but hey, look, carry for support, still going to be worthwhile for you. The Bolts are happy with that trade. Plus, I guess prior to that, it was mid for support, so ultimately maybe coming out as a wash for those 2 kills. Bloodbath between these 2 teams. I mean, they are brawling whenever they get the opportunity. That is an aggressive play from the Bolts dual lane. But it still ultimately comes out, as at least in my mind, based on what the numbers we're seeing, with the Warriors just slightly ahead every step of the way.
Yep, it's just been these little gold leads. Now it's built up to a bigger gold lead. Not big, but bigger. About 1,000 for the Oni Warriors. It's been 300, 400, 500. Slowly built up for the Oni Warriors. And now you look at gold. Where is that gold? Where's that XP differential? Gore XP still in the mid lane. Remember, Venenu was let loose in game number 2. The Scylla was left unchecked throughout that entire game, and that's what the Olympus Bolts chose to play around. I think the Oni Warriors have that ability now, but with Dardes. A 2-level lead for Dardes at a mid. We've already seen the burst damage. This Hera is a real big threat to the Olympus Bolts, and one that the Oni Warriors can take advantage of.
And honestly, it's been doing very, very well. Again, it's just 002, but that's how the Morrigan worked in game number 1,
James
right?
Bond's
You
little
weren't
brother.
necessarily looking at it as this hyper carry Dardes. You were looking at it as, oh, hey, Dardes is getting things done, and his team just happens to capitalize on it. I think that's the way they're playing here.
Gold Fury started by the Oni Warriors. Solo laners rotating in. One's already here. That's Nika. Haddix coming from the mid lane, an opportunity for a gank around the backside. That's Lasbra. Neoma is low here. And remember, Neoma loves being in the front of these fights. Gold Fury secured by the Oni Warriors, but Lasbra has completed his roundabout gank. 1 down, 2 around the corner. Lasbra's got a double. Cubo Fred with the pin on the back will slow down the re-engage from the rest of the Olympus Bolts, but Dardes cannot participate. Argus is already out, and it's swinging at Barracuda. Shielding will save your life, but it won't save you for much longer. The Olympus Bolts nearly clean house in the fight.
I mean, pretty much exactly what you need this kill.
Ooh,
That's a
important.
good turnaround from Nika. I mean, that is one of those small moments where, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know where the Gold Fury, like, it's so difficult to weigh the scales. You get 2 kills onto the carries that you were having trouble to. You lose 3 in the process, so the 3-for-2 trade favors the Bolts. But you got a Gold Fury if you're the Warriors, which ultimately feels like it makes it just a teensy more worthwhile since you killed off Vin and Barra. That being said, you also have to look at Barra being 2-1-6, Lazarus 3-1-4. They are having a lot more of an impact on the Bolts than they had in Game 1. Honestly, even in Game 2, they were both controlling, but this is a very good slash line for them where they're kind of dominating it. So the Warriors still get maybe a slightly favored engagement in there in that one, but they're going to need it to go much more overwhelmingly in their favor next time.
I mean, what did I say? It was about a 1,000 gold lead, then that fight broke out. A little closer to 2,000 gold in the lead are the Oni Warriors, and the Fury, as you point out, Gore, making the big difference in that fight. Nika has benefited from all of these rotations out of lane. Haddock's, 101. It's not been bad by any means for Haddock's, but Nika at 4-0 on this Cerberus has just done so much for this Oni Warriors team and will continue to be a threat as Haddock stops the back. As this game ends up going on, bit of a 2v2 here in the duo lane. Barracuda up to the sky. Vote dashes away from 1. Number 2, no good. 3 hits onto Vote, but the rotation is through from both of the junglers here. Maybe it's the mid laner for the Oni Warriors. Argus is out, and it drops on Jake's head. And now Numa and Dardes have to finish off this kill because Lasber's already gotten 1. But awesome Jake slips the noose out of the backside of the fight. He goes. Lasber's got another double kill in the fight. What a beneficial rotation for the Bolts.
Oh, what a good taunt from Jake as well. He might lose his life, but look at the setup.
Oh, but Cubo Fred is low. Numa is low. One last auto, one last dash. Lasbro with the triple. Is he going to get the quad? Yes, please. The Olympus Bolts jungler massive on the left side.
What a way to start off this game. I mean, 14 minutes in, but a great play from Lasbro there.
Nika
good
teleport
aggression.
to the left for the
And
penta.
let's just go ahead and throw it out there. All of that setup from Jake. He loses his life, but that 2-man taunt just makes it so much easier. Otherwise, that's a disengage from the Bolts. You're not looking at another kill. Maybe you're getting some pressure, but really good turnaround from Jake. Good damage from Barra, and of course, great kills from Lasbro to dive the tower and get things done.
And that's isn't it moments like that? He's incredible right now. This Nemesis is just hit right, and a lot of it feels like it's going on to Numa and of course Cubo Fred this game. But think about the questions, right, that this Nemesis is answering, and it's Numa who was left alive at the end of so many fights in Game 2. It feels like Numa who has kept these fights alive. Look. Lasbro just walks in, drops the ultimate, strips away some of those protections, then runs down the rest of the Oni Warriors. You're solving what was a huge problem. And this Nemesis has just looked great.
And it showcases, look, this is something that you don't get to talk about too often. Yeah, that taunt
that
and
was
just
nuts.
the setup. Look, all of that looked beautiful from the Bolts. Really, really well played. But you also get something interesting, not in that play, but prior to that. And it's just worth reminding that, you can throw out those auto attacks in between your Nemesis dashes, things like that. Getting that extra damage out there allows him to stick to Dardes like glue, makes sure that he's not able to disengage. I mean, it's one of those things. Nemesis can go either or, right? I'm going to be a facilitator this game looking for slows and ulting, or I'm going to be a hyper carry this game looking for autos and killing. And so far, we're getting a little bit of both from Lasbro, definitely a little more hyper carry right now at 7-1-4. And I love being able to watch those little plays, especially the slower when you know it's about to happen. Gonna throw him out there though. The first kill he got was just a last hit, but every other kill in that
still
play
in the kill column.
was still worth it and still rewarded to him.
God, his build is scary right now. Stone Cutting Sword, Erendite, and then Hydras. I mean, this Nemesis is just shredding right now. Cubo Fred, tall task ahead to try to match the pressure that Lasbro's been able to provide. Still some hope, though. Hope is not all gone for the Oni Warriors here. Gold equalized after that quadra kill from Lasbro, so not a huge lead for the Bolts. Not a deafening defeat for the Oni Warriors. Nika still with a 2-level lead over Haddock's in the solo lane. 3 levels in the jungle doesn't feel great. But you need this Cerberus to really flex some of those muscles, make the difference.
I was actually going to mention it earlier. I think the most BM, going back to the very beginning conversation we had, would be if Nika could finish this game 4-0-8 and win over
Oh,
Jake,
that'd be
but
great.
that would be definitely something. Has to play it very carefully.
Nika's going to get more kills. There's no way
yeah,
he ends
there's
at 4,
no
right?
way he ends with 4. Not with the way things have been going, and that's where this Primal Fury comes in. This next engagement is maybe the biggest deal
Right.
because it could be the first lead for the Bolts, and they've been winning these fights. It does come down to this. This is a good spot for the Warriors to try and reclaim what was once theirs, or for the Bolts to really plant their flag in the ground and claim this victory.
Yep. And it's important to consider around that quad from Lasbra, Nika wasn't there. That's why I jokingly said teleport over, give him the penta. Because that's the beefy lead that you've got right now if you're the Oni Warriors. It's the 4-0 Cerberus who wasn't in that last fight. Does that fight go differently if Nika's around? Of course, a little bit at least. But Haddix might have also been there. And so we're going to really get to see where these leads lie now if there's a fight around this Primal Fury. Early vision control goes over to the Olympus Bolts. Remember, around the last Fury, what worked so well for the Bolts despite losing the Fury itself was the roundabout rotation from Lasbra. Able to find some kills. Lasbra is in mid here. Cubo Fred spots out Jake and Lasbra, so there is an opportunity for the Oni Warriors rather to find an odd-numbered engagement. Haddix playing with fire, but not too worried about getting burnt.
Did you know that it has been almost a full year since the last SBL pentakill?
Really?
Yeah, because Cherio got it last year.
And that was you,
And,
right? You called that one. Was that
and
right? He
nobody's
was on
been able to
Erlang
pick it up.
Shen?
We got a lot of like quadras this year, but no one's been able to pick up the penta just yet.
Lasbra's had a bunch of multi-kills in this
Yes,
set
he
alone.
has.
And triples, doubles, a quad. Complete the cycle. Get yourself a pentakill here, Lasbra. Snipes from Barracuda. That's early in this fight. Tickles Dardes for just a little bit, but now Neilma has the ability to do just this. Find your way into the back line. Argus drops on both of the carries. It's massive from Dardes, but you haven't finished off the kills. Not just yet. Nika will gladly do so, though. Big silence from Vote as a death cry to keep his team in the rest of this fight. A double kill from the Cerberus. Haddix left alone with 3. Dardes gets plucked right on back, but it's out of danger. Nika can burn Haddix down for the triple kill here. Awesome Jake around the corner. There's the leap through, but Haddix breaks some ankles and will dash away. So no triple kill yet for Haddix, or for Nika rather. But this is what we meant. This is where Nika could go big. Cubo Fred, they don't see Awesome Jake. It's a silence, and Nika's got no mana. Cubo Fred's got no mana. Jake and Haddix will survive. No deicide for the Warriors.
Jake lives his life so dangerously. How many times has he gone in with no health? I mean, that's like the 4th time in the last 2 games that he has gone in with like no health, no mana, just to get a taunt, just to get some setup, and it's almost always been paid off for them. Here, he's lucky to get out with his life. But that is a good turnaround. The Warriors pause the Bolts. They get themselves another little bit of a lead to start pushing themselves further ahead. And now they're in a better position to start up a Primal Fury. Maybe not the best position to secure it, but they can at least start the fight and make the Bolts have to react.
Something. If Nika's here, maybe this fight goes better, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I think proven correct there. As the Oni Warrior solo laner continues to be a threat to all of the Olympus Bolts. Actives, not decimated, but definitely not healthy going into this fight. Neilma having Thorns, I think, pretty important here, Gore. The Reflect plus Reflect damage does so much for Neilma and his ability to get into that backline. You know, it felt like a perfect engage. Neilma had the backline locked down.
That Argus.
Argus was huge as follow-up, and then Vote, despite dying, dropped the Dark Portal onto 2. It was a great fight for the Oni Warriors. You'll need some more magic just like that to win. Cubo Fred's used his got the ultimate on him from Lasbra. Neilma plucked into the back, and Barracuda sends him to the grave. Up to the sky, we'll see where the snipes land. A few onto Dardes. Argus finds another couple of targets. Cubo Fred with a double taunt, but Lasbra does not care. Down goes Dardes. The Oni Warriors have lost 2 at the beginning of this fight. Cubo Fred has eyes for Lasbra. Nika, wouldn't you guess it? He's unstoppable, and he's alive at the end of the fight. This fight is equalized.
7-0-2 right now for this Cerberus is just dominating these fights. And with Lasbra off the board, it makes it a lot more difficult.
Jake blinks back through. Primal Fury is still low. He's living life on the edge. Once again, the Oni Warriors take the Primal Fury. And it has been the second fight, the fight after the initial fight that the Oni Warriors have been winning, and it's been when Nika is able to be alive and get involved at the end. Neilma throws his life away, not in a bad way, but he's the one who dies to start things off there. And I think you called it pretty well in the middle of that fight, Gore. The Arguses continue to be pretty impactful from Dardes. Even if you die, let's get some damage in there from the grave. Let's find some knockups and some disruption at least. And he's been able to do so.
I mean, that's 2 fights in a row where it's landed on the backliners, 2 fights in a row where it's done really really good at oppressing them and locking them away from the fight. But you also have to look at some of the places. So Barra has much better snipes that time, but the fight prior to that, snipes are forced out immediately. Here, they're forced out early enough that Dardes kind of shrugs off the damage. I mean, they're not necessarily that worried about it as compared to what they've done anywhere else. Vin also completely whiffs, just was going for the Neil kill, but ultimately ends up missing the Emma Monster as Neil falls down prior to that. So it doesn't really get the damage out that you would like to see. And that opens up a lot more opportunities for the Warriors to come back in and find the punches they need.
And Gore, you're noting it. What a difference one game makes. Venenu's at the bottom of the damage charts with 3,000 22 minutes in. By this point in game one, he was like 15,000.
You could sneeze a good I'm a Monster and double his damage.
Right. You absolutely could. Venenu has been kept in check. In Game 3, the Oni Warriors have played around the Scylla so effectively, but there's still the threat from Barracuda, who's on the opposite side of the damage charts, and kind of flip-flopping with Vote. You've done 3 or so more 1,000 damage. Then the enemy's Izanami. Lasbra continues to be at the forefront of the conversation and continues to be around the backside of the Oni Warriors. Ultimate is dropped in a menacing manner. But Lasbra will end up backing off. You don't want to overcommit. Not now. Kivo Fred and Awesome Jake will duel out here. It's a taunt back through. Awesome Jake can send one Kivo Fred's way if he wants to return the favor. Couple ultimates spent. One from each jungler, but no kills.
And honestly, this is where you have to start looking at. First off, 7-0-2 for Nika is a huge deal. Because when you go back and look at the only other player that's got that many kills, 9-3-5 for Lasbra. He was 7-1 not too long ago. He had much more explosive early game, and since then he's gone 2-2. He hasn't necessarily had that same performance. And thus is the way of Nemesis. You go for the Magi's Cloak, you've got a good build, but so far, every time he's gone deep, I've watched him taunt around Cuvo Fred for a little while, but not really have any return damage.
Right.
Just kind of playing distraction more than playing carry. And it is, in combination, that plus the fact that Vin isn't getting that much damage out there, that's really starting to lock down and make the bolts trudge through mud. They're not getting as much done in these fights versus Dardes' damage, versus Vote's damage. The silences from that giant Izanami ult, that Dark Portal, has been phenomenal. It's not even something that you typically get to see often in the middle of a fight, but he has been well placed along with that Argus. It just makes it so difficult to exist as the bolts.
Yeah, the Oni the carries, and that's a great point, Gore. The carries of the Oni Warriors, we talked about Argus in the Dark Portal now. The I'm going to die, let me at least get my ultimate out and find some silence, some disruption. Not only damage, but something to give my team a bit of a life raft if I end up dying at the beginning of this fight, and that's worked so well for the Oni Warriors. Nika, the way his build is going right now, the survivability off the charts, Bulwark of Hope into Spectral Armor, so Barracuda, with only the Wind Demon, to be fair, in the crit department, won't be dealing as much damage to Nika, and then the Bulwark for that little burst once the health bar gets low enough. And so there's got to be an answer now for the Cerberus, because there hasn't been up to this point, Gore. It just run through these fights. And look at the targets. I mean, it's been the duo lane for the Oni Warriors that have made up 10 of the 16 kills of the Olympus Bolts. And this would be something, wouldn't it? Nika and Dardes around the Fire Giant, just seeing if they can find themselves a pick, the Oni Warriors. And they won't. But it's almost like Neomon Vote die, but then you got this giant raid boss Cerberus left. Oh my goodness. Awesome, Jake. Wouldn't even let me finish my sentence. The Oni Warriors, that's a big pick. A lot of engage potential off the board.
And a lot of their turnaround potential for the Bolts has been built in Jake being admittedly hyper-aggressive, but very, very well placed with his taunts.
That was a lot.
Completely destroyed. One of the few times, and that was from full health, let alone the times he's been jumping in with 100 or less over the last few engagements.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, that is a good pickup for the Warriors. And with 20 seconds without him, I mean, I'd start putting some pressure onto the Fire Giant pit. Make them feel awkward. Make the Bolts make a bad play.
Yeah, why not? You got yourself a one-man advantage. Luckily, a little bit behind in levels as far as the entire game goes, means that Awesome Jake will be respawning here shortly. Cubo Fred's still 2 levels down under Lasbra, so a jungle advantage for the Olympus Bolts remains. Fire Giant is low. The Oni Warriors doing this one quickly. Haddock's pushed back around the FG. Nika keeping Venenu around the backside of this fight. Speaking of around the backside, Lasbra sending some damage. Dardes his way, but look at the peel. Barracuda! Of course he hits him, and of course he hits him on the boat. Needs to be a return kill, and there is. And it's Neoma who flips it right around, but now Barracuda with the double rolls himself forward into the remainder of this fight. Scattered to the wind are the Oni Warriors. A good pin slows down Haddock's. Nika blinks on away, will pull Haddock's right back in to the fray in this fight. But Barracuda, he's got blood in his eyes. He's looking for the triple. He won't find it. Instead, Nika will turn around one.
I mean, still getting a lot of good damage. It is so unfortunate to lose Haddix there, because I think otherwise they're in a much better position, potentially able to burn down a Fire Giant and feel really confident about it. They still have the damage to do a Fire Giant if they so pleased, but Vin's kind of low. Jake, I mean, you'd get it on mainly the important targets, so it's not necessarily a bad call, but I like this a little bit more. Go for the Pyro, mostly reset, wait for Haddix, specifically wait for Lasbra. But good snipes from Barra to start that off. I mean, that's where things have been kind of missing. Those have been a little more lackluster. And I will call it, I didn't see Vin hit a person with the Ammo Monster, but he hit the Argus with Ammo Monster, and that made it so much easier to function and flow through that fight, not having to worry about the sixth man on the field.
I think it's important as well, because we've talked about, look, votes 2, 5, and 6, okay as far as damage numbers go, but it's been the final use of the ultimate on his way out as he dies that kind of provides a little bit of extra utility for his team. No opportunity to do so that time. Vote just got deleted on the back, and there was no one really in range for that ultimate to make an impact. The Oni Warriors not deterred, though, Gore. They will start up the Fire Giant once more. This is big, awesome. Jake CC'd on down, and Vote picks up the kill. But this is what worked, right? You don't have Jake, and the Olympus Bolts win a 4v5. But the death timer a lot longer this time.
Yeah, and it's going to take a lot longer to re-engage that Fire Giant. Still getting burned down just slowly.
Lasbra.
But yeah, you got to keep your eyes on the other jungler. That's the opening. I mean, you get to vote, and that's going to make this so much easier for you.
Lasbra's going to have an easy route in. Look at the CC yet again. This time it's on to Haddix. Lasbra finds an opening. It's on to Vote, but there's too much peel for the Oni Warriors. Lasbra left running. Barracuda good with a couple of snipes. Vote uses or what I thought was an Aegis by the end of it there, but how about the rest of the fight, Dave? Cubo Fred's found Barracuda. Haddix has to dash away. Vote, if nothing else, stays alive on the back. Barracuda crashed back down to earth after doing some damage to this Izanami. And now, still a 5v4 on the map, but a 5v3 around the Fire Giant pit for the Oni Warriors. Venenu has steal potential, but he's not going to have the opening. The Oni Warriors know exactly where Venenu is, and the Oni Warriors secure an FG 29 minutes in.
And it's one of those awkward moments. You think, man, if we had been able to wait one more minute, we'd have an enhanced FG. You're not going to make a play like that. You need this buff. And with the way things have been going, I mean, they've slowly accrued a pretty decent lead. Some of it through little pyromancers pushing up the waves. I mean, towers still kind of, well, technically favoring the Bolts. But, I mean, mostly even, it has just been the Warriors kind of buckling down the way they've played this game that has really got them to the point where they are controlling this. And so much, you had highlighted it, but peel is the key term. I mean, no matter who Lasbra tries to go in on there, good luck. I mean, they were so set to make sure that no one was going to die on the Warriors that it would have been the most awkward moment to be a jungler. And you could see it. Lasbra goes in, throws out his ult, throws out his damage, and then turns around because he's not going to be able to find anything. I think that is well played from the Warriors, and it opens up a lot of conversations for their Phoenix Sieges.
And I think it's been cool how Kivo Freds played these fights as well. It's kind of a peel bot right now.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd want your Long Shen, you'd think, to be this big engager. You find the taunt, the rest of your team piles on. Kivo Fred, I think, has realized, look, my job is better spent trying to mirror Lasbra, and whoever Lasbra ults, I'm taunting Lasbra away from them. Your Long Shen has provided that amount of utility, or that level of utility. So the Oni Warriors in a position to upset the Olympus Bolts in week 1 of phase number 3, a Phoenix Siege separating Game 3 from coming to a close. This is an opportunity, though, Gore. Still low on the damage charts is Venenu. When everyone's fighting Intio in a little bit more clean of a way, maybe this is where the M monsters, the crushes, and these narrow corridors can find an impact.
6,078 player damage so far from Venenu. This fight, that number is going to need to essentially double, or we're probably going to be watching the Titan falling in just a few seconds.
Yep.
It depends, I think, entirely on where his pressure is. And they're going to start it off now.
Nika wants to fight, forces the beads out of Barracuda, but Barra has taken a whole lot of damage. Lasbra wins a 1v1 with Cubo Fred. Bedardez is able to even up the score. Vote will walk away from the snipes, but Lasbra trying to close the gap, won't be able to do so. Nilma still disrupting the backline here, and that is massive bot space for Vote to get out of the remainder of this fight. Argus still stands. Venenu will put down Argus once more. Awesome Jake blinks into the back, gets the taunt away onto Vote, whose eyes are still only for the Phoenix. Barracuda back from the fountain, sends some damage. Dardes his way. Awesome Jake will dash and then leap away. Phoenix still alive. Barracuda stunned. Dardes finishes off the kill. And this is the only Warriors opening that they needed. And the left side, Phoenix secure.
At least get the bird. That's exactly what was on their mind, and they're able to pick it up. They lose Cuvo in the process. That is a huge part of their engage and a huge part, as you had mentioned, of their peel dealing with Lasbra. But keeping Vote alive, a beautiful Aegis to immune snipes, as well as an I'm a Monster, helps keep him going.
Lasbra's in the back, and Vote does not have any relics. Dodges out the crush. That's massive to avoid that damage. Vote's health bar would have effectively been nothing had he walked into that. So now the Phoenix sieged up once more. Awesome Jake sends Vote backwards with the ultimate. Awesome Jake finishes off the kill, but the mid lane Phoenix also gone. Lasbra with a bit of an opening to deal some damage to the front line of the Oni Warriors, but there's another Argus on the back end of this fight. Lasbra will walk on away towards the red buff here, lurking in the waters. Is Haddix out of the solo lane. Nika running off to the right. Cuvo Fred has found Lasbra back on the respawn. Crush will deter any further engage.
Yeah, Cuvo just off the mark with the taunt, not able to pull Lasbra in, but he's still going. He blinks forward.
He blinks forward, does not get the knock up onto Lasbra. Frenzy gets used. There's I'm a Monster. Awesome Jake finishes the kill, but Venenu did 99% of the damage. But the only Warrior score, they got what they came for. It's a left side Phoenix and a mid lane Phoenix gone. The Olympus Bolts likely not able to flip the map at all. You lose a couple members in the meantime, but the Oni Warriors happy with the map state.
They delay this out. Look, Fire Giant's falling off in 4 seconds anyway, so it doesn't matter that these three still have it, but you burn down Vote, you burn down Cuvo. Cuvo maintains his beats, and by the time Vote's engaged, at least should have one of his 2 relics back available for them. Important play for the Bolts, though. If they don't get those kills, there's a good potential that Titan is going down, so a really good turnaround. They use a lot to do so, but they do make themselves known and their presence known. But they can still hang around. I mean, this next Fire Giant isn't a sure thing for the Oni Warriors, so it's going to have to be caution. Maybe not necessarily to the wind, but a lot of caution available for the Bolts, especially around Venenu right now. I'm looking at these I'm a Monsters, no beads, and they will not be available when the Fire Giant respawns. It's going to make him a much easier target.
Yeah, Lasbra at 10, 4, and 8. A lot of front-loaded kills. Been liking that word today, front-loaded. Lasbra found a lot of those kills at the beginning of the game. Has added a kill for a death, it feels like, over the last few fights. Maybe that's all you need to do. 2, 3, and 12 gore, I don't think does justice to the impact that Dardes has had on this game. The 12 assists, sure, but 2 and 3, definitely not. That's top damage in the game for this Hera. And this pick just looks so much more comfortable. We're now getting some data on it. We figured, you know, at the beginning of the game, hey, I like this Hera more than I like the Aphrodite. Now you're seeing why, where you're dealing damage at the same time as you're peeling off of yourself and off the rest of your team. Rarely going to be a bad thing. The Olympus Bolt score, I think they have to step forward for this one. You let an enhanced Fire Giant go with only 1 Phoenix left standing. Game might as well be over.
And they've done a good job pushing up the Phoenix waves, although look at that wave in left. It's massive. And so that is going to be a threat. It's going to take a little bit. It's going to have to make it through that wave and another before it can start threatening any sort of Titan. There's a lot of minions hanging out.
Oh no, Awesome Jake walks into the Oni Warriors here, but he is happy about it. Vote sends so much damage his way. I'm a Monster, triggered from Venenu. Will it connect? No, it won't. Vote dashes away. Cuvo Fred with 1 taunt. Crush is the dash away from Venenu, and that does not connect for damage. Big ultimates down. Snipes gone. I'm a Monster gone, and the Olympus Bolts left running.
A lot that was burned from the Bolts that did not get what they needed it to. They're going to have to fall back. I'm a Monster being gone means Crush is your only way to really try and steal this. And Vin recognizes it. They can't let this go. You had already mentioned it, but EFG is too important.
Too important, and the Oni Warriors have a great opportunity to secure it for themselves. Lasbra rounding way around the backside of this fight. Vote could be the target. Vote has both of his actives, though. Lasbra drops the ult onto Vote, who just dashes away. Lasbra takes Argus. In the meantime, the Fire Minions in the base. The Oni Warriors secure the enhanced Fire Giant, Barracuda and Venenu on the back end of this fight, sending some damage Neilma's way as the Kuzumbo continues to walk forward. Lasbra with nearly no HP will get out of the fight on left. 1 is back at base. That's Haddix defending the Titan. But Vote realizes Awesome Jake might still be a prime target. I'm not sure, Gore. You're right. The minions in on the Olympus Bolts Titan. Lasbra is able to go back. And the game goes on, but maybe not for much longer. The Oni Warriors have enhanced Fire Giant on all 5.
Good news, though. Mid-Phoenix respawns. Titan is going to start getting some health back. Desperately needs it.
You got to fight away from your base, right? I mean, the Oni Warriors can just breathe on the Titan. You gotta.
Oh.
I mean, your Phoenix maybe stands for a little bit. It's a game of chess I don't want to be playing right now if I'm the Olympus Bolts.
Yeah, EFG makes those 2 weakened Phoenixes pretty easy. Luckily, Fire Minions dealt with on left, gone. Mid, this should be the last wave that they're going to have to deal with here in a second. And you can already see, I mean, much like you had said, you kind of need to pull away a little outside the base so that they don't just focus on the Titan. The problem is you don't get that 6-man that is the Phoenix. Granted, they're not going to last very long right now under what Vote has been able to do. This build, as well as an EFG, should make it pretty easy to burn down a bird. But this is a good spot for them to be in. I mean, a good pluck from either Jake with his ult or maybe Haddix with a literal pluck could actually make things pretty easy for them.
Good spot
if they
physically.
can get Vote or Dardes.
Good spot physically, not necessarily.
Yeah.
Like in the game state, right?
they are definitely stressed.
Right. They are slightly stressed. The good news is, if there is good news, Titan is half HP again, has regained some of that health. Phoenixes both respawned, both at half HP. So what was a stiff breeze has now become, I don't know, a bit more of a tornado worth of damage that needs to find its way in from the Oni Warriors. The good news for the Warriors is they can do that quickly. Lasbra has loved wrapping around the backside of these fights, but then kind of self-peel from the carries have gotten them out. Unfortunately for Lasbra, it's a lot more head-on right now. You don't have the ability to as quickly wrap around behind Vote, wrap around behind Dardes in these fights. And so Lasbra kind of just has to walk on in, walk forward. All ultimates in the game ready to go. Aegis down for Vote, Beads down for Cubo Fred. Barracuda, he's under some threat here, Gore. No actives for the ROM.
Lasbra got a quadra kill this game. I'm just going to throw that out there. Like, that was this game that happened, and has since not necessarily been able to find the same huge impact that we saw earlier on. That's kind of why we keep saying front-loaded on those kills.
Watch out for the blinks, too, I think.
Keep your eyes on where he was. He was backing for a second there, but he's looking for the backline. There goes Haddix.
Haddix uses the first blink of this fight. Lurking in the waters is he. Awesome Jake takes some damage from Vote. Haddix will back away from this fight. Awesome Jake will want to do so as well. He'll have to leap himself over the wall. So now it's the 3 blinks on the Oni Warriors that will suddenly engage onto this fight. Barracuda uses his beads that just now came up. Can he hit the snipe onto Vote? No for one, but yes on the DOT from Awesome Jake. Now there's no ADC, but look at Nilma. He's running in at the back line. Dardes on a killing spree. Nilma gets the kill onto Barracuda on the left side of the map. Cubo Fred chopping away onto Venenu. It's a pluck from Haddix to peel out for his mid laner. Dardes still plenty healthy enough. Argus a bit low on the HP bar, but Nilma Gore, he just controlled the left side of the map.
And I actually like this call. Look, Haddix doesn't have maybe enough damage to get the immediate kill onto Dardes.
Go, Neil, go!
With Cubo there, look, with EFG, you should at least get 1 Phoenix. I thought Cubo was going to go for the help, but now they might get caught out. Luckily, Neil has so much health, I don't think he's worried about it.
Nika finally dies, and that's where a frontliner has to step up for the Oni Warriors, and Nilma does in a big, big way, disrupting Barracuda, whose beads came up and then immediately went down.
Jake's
Still has Aegis on respawn. Awesome Jake just delaying things from Nilma. Far from worst case scenario there for the Olympus Bolts. Yeah. If you're telling me all you lose under an enhanced Fire Giant siege is your left Phoenix that was at half HP, you have to call that a win.
Yeah, and especially, look at that. I didn't even notice it. All the ward coverage the Warriors have on that left-hand side, just trying to get aggressive, make sure they caught it out. I thought Lasbra for sure was going to have trouble. He went for his speed buff in the middle of the engagement, like right before things kicked off. I thought that was going to end up kind of keeping him out of position, but ultimately it caused a great rotation for him. Still loses his life. Things aren't maybe going as well for Barra and Lasbra, but they get exactly what they needed to. Vote was gone, and once Vote was gone, the stress to the base really disappeared underneath that. So great from Jake, great from Barra to put him under pressure. They don't have a lot to move out from, right? I mean, you can get aggressive. They pushed up the wave in mid. They need someone who right now it's Lasbra pushing up the wave in left. They lose out this primal. You're going to need, again, all hands on deck, as much as you can at least, here for this Fire Giant. Last time Haddix got pulled away and made it a lot easier, I think this is where the pressure really starts to turn around. I think the Bolts are not out of it, but this is still such a wildly uncomfortable position to be in.
How about this for day 1 of Phase 3, Gormizer? The Oni Warriors and the Olympus Bolts go all 3 games, and we are 40 minutes into game number 3, a game where Lasbra had a quadra kill earlier on. You're thinking the Bolts are on easy street to end this one. But that never give up attitude, and also Nika being ridiculous at this game keeps the Oni Warriors in things.
8-1-7.
8-1-7.
Cerberus,
First
by
kill
the
of
way.
the game. in his previous fight. Awesome Jake dodges out some of the damage here from Vote. Fire Giant started, but now reset. Big crush damage from Venenu as well. The Oni Warriors front line take a little bit more damage than they bargained for. I'm a monster. That's no good onto Neomon. Neomon now turns around. So many ultimates into this Kuzenbo, and the Olympus Bolts have not been able to finish off the kills. Barracuda sends a few snipes towards Vote, and Awesome Jake doing his best to get the kill onto the Oni Warriors. Hunter Dardes lives on. Aegis times out. Haddix picks up that one. The Olympus Bolts, they're going massive when they need to, but you can't forget the front line of the Oni Warriors.
That's such a good kill for him. 70 seconds without a mid laner should still be a kill on Neil, but it's taking so many resources.
Haddix has got the double kill core. This is massive. And Nika might die here as well. Have the Olympus Bolts done enough? Backs against the wall. They're going to get 4.
I mean, that is such a clean pickup. They chase him down, but Jake's still losing his life. Look, they still have 3 tier 2s, Dave. It's one of those things. You're out of the hot water, out of the fryer. Well, actually, maybe into the frying pan. Look at those fire minions.
Cuvo Fred is stuck around. He needs to delay here. You have to delay. Fire minions are in the base of the Olympus Bolts. Barracuda plus Haddix in the mid lane. Cuvo Fred is going to go back to base. No, he's not, because Awesome Jake has jumped on in. Jake happy to delay this back. That's going to leave Barracuda and Haddix on the mid lane. Phoenix. Awesome Jake is going to die here. Cuvo Fred gets the all-important kill, but now it's a Titan siege. There's still fire minions on the Olympus Bolts base. Cuvo Fred respawns here. There's not enough to end the game on one side of the map. Cuvo Fred gets the pin onto Barracuda. Sent on back. Are you kidding me? The Olympus Bolts win game 3.
I mean, that is just so well played from them. All the pressure, and I'm going to give credit. Barra throws the snipes out there, but it is Jake who kills off Vote, and that is what starts things off. That was initially a bad engagement. At least it felt like they put so much into Neil, and Neil was like, all right, cool, so I'm still Kuzenbo, I'm still half health, I'm a monster miss, and I still have thorns. I'm not worried about anything.
Wow.
It's the pressure onto the back line, everybody else in the Warriors, that really causes the disruption, and then it's just so separated. Nothing that they could do to coalesce the way they needed to, and the Bolts just played 5 strong.
Hey, phase 3 of the SPL, huh? Remember, these games matter for the
Yeah,
World
they do.
Championship. There's one round robin. This is the last time prior to group stages these 2 teams will meet. You're not thrilled if you're the Oni Warriors that you lost, but you're happy that the win-loss is -1 instead of -2. Those types of little tiebreakers, they're going to be important. The Olympus Bolts, they find a way to get it done despite backs against the wall. 2 Phoenixes down, half HP on your Titan, enhanced Fire Giant on all 5 of the Oni Warriors, and you win the game. Unbelievable.
Yeah, we'll take it.
The Olympus Bolts will win this one in 3 games up against the Oni Warriors. Gore and I will take a break. The Dusk will be back to break it down.
Let's go back, let's start again, to a place a long time ago when I kissed your lips. I can see the fire that we made just to save us, when we try to make up for never letting go. Said the things we promised not to say, that we break up just to start all over, even though we know this is the hard way back. We can't be heartache together. This is the hard way back. We can't be heartache together.
Hey there, Smite fans, Aggro here. Look, every single year, the SPL just keeps getting better. Season 7 was incredible, and in Season 8, I'm sure our players are going to take their game to the next level. But in order to do that, they're going to need the best gear they can get their hands on. And that's why I'm so excited to announce the title sponsor for Season 8 of the SPL is Alienware. Yeah, that Alienware. Our players are getting the best of the best in computer gaming. These Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition PC setups are insane. Not only will these be the PCs that the players will compete on once we are in studio, but Alienware is also providing one for each player at their home setup to make sure their practice is as good as possible. Now let's get down to brass tacks. The specs on these Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition desktops are amazing. An AMD Ryzen 9 16-core processor.
That's a lot of cores.
That's plenty of processing power.
That's a lot of cores.
Plenty of cores.
If you want to stream, this is the way to go.
I know a lot about my cores, so. I mean, Pilates, right?
64 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM.
What? Is that true?
That is true.
I mean, this thing has 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM.
Which you can do literally anything with.
Literally anything.
I've never had more than 16 gigs.
That's quadruple I might not have at home.
And one of the hottest commodities in the PC world, an NVIDIA GeForce 3090 graphics card.
Insane how much better this is than what I have.
The best graphics you really need, Ultra, of course.
Content's gonna look good.
And what's the point of all the power if you can't see it? Players will also be using the Alienware 25-inch 240Hz monitors.
Man, when I load into scrims with this bad boy, I'm gonna feed so hard. And it's gonna be in perfect picture quality.
We are so excited to be partnering with Alienware for Season 8 of the SMITE Pro League. And the best part is, this VIP treatment, it's not just for the pros. You too can get the best possible SMITE experience. Just go to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get special discounts on some of Alienware's best products. Thanks again to Alienware. Make sure you're following them on Twitter and Instagram. That's at Alienware on both platforms. And you can join their community at alienwarearena.com. I know Mike didn't say the thing. Mike, can you say the thing for him?
You're telling me an alien wore this?
And welcome back to the desk for the SMITE Pro League for one final time today, powered by our title sponsor, Alienware. You can get all of the sweet information on those Aurora Ryzen desktops or the 240Hz gaming monitor over at smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW. Get yourself some nice discounts and coupons available for yourself so you can try and get some of the best gear out there. Thanks again to Alienware for sponsoring the SMITE Pro League. You can follow them on their social media at Alienware on Twitter and Instagram, and go to alienwarearena.com and join their global community and see all the other cool giveaways and stuff they have available to them. With the Bolts winning game number 3, they close out the set, and what a nail-biter of a game that we got to have for our Game 3 today, Mifflin. At no point were we able to say, this is the game. We thought we could, but there was no point where you just go, all right, this is the end of the game until it happened.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't think of a better way to start off Phase 3, right? Or end Day 1 of Phase 3, to be sure. Man, it was a back-and-forth battle for the entirety of this match. One team finds one step in the lead. Another team comes back with 2, and then at the very end of the match, it comes down to, can one player stop the end of the game? I know that there was some discourse in the Twitch chat. I'm sure there was some discourse in the green room as well. I think maybe, and I know I'm kind of hyper-focusing on just the very end of the game, but you kind of have to in a match as long as that was. What if Cubo Fred decides, look, I can't win a 1v3 inside of my own Titan? Maybe he goes for the split push. We get a little base race action. Could have been incredibly fun to watch, but if you're able to harken all the way back to the 13-minute mark, Lasbra, yes, did actually get a quadra kill and didn't really show any signs of slowing afterward. The Olympus Bolts entirely look incredibly strong throughout the duration of that match, but nail-biter, I think, is the only way to describe it. And with a game as close as that, you can't argue strategies. You can't say, okay, one team just came in with a better idea than the other. It's all execution on field. Micro plays, individual talent is what separates this game from a win and a loss. And today, on 9/17/2021, 5:46 Eastern Standard Time, the Olympus Bolts were a little bit better.
A little specific on. They actually won a little bit sooner than 5:46.
Hey man, let me do my
so-
thing.
Okay. Well, we'll let you have it. That we documented it here at 5:46 p.m. EST for it. But all that starts with a first blood. I mean, the instant that I throw it over to Dave and Gore, we're already seeing Neil under siege. He falls down for first blood, and then we see a quadra kill just a few minutes, not a few, 15 minutes later by Lasby. You think that's the end of it there? But it's not quite over for it. We do have an interview standing by for our post game. We got Barracuda on call to kind of help us break down. First off, Barracuda, I got to ask, what beef did y'all have with Neil at minute 1 of the game where you just decided to put 4 people over there?
I was very tired of dealing with that man this set, honestly. So I was like, he's probably going to go ward that again. We should just group up and go kill him. And then, like, right when we saw him, I was like, oh, God bless. We could just end this game early and then steamroll. And then they were at our 2-minute buffs. They were at our 4-minute buffs. They were at our 6-minute buffs. And I'm just like, no, this game's going to drag out for so long.
And it did end up dragging out for so long. Kind of walk us through the team comms of that last team fight. What was kind of the discussion going around there on that FG?
We were getting kind of desperate. We just wanted to force a fight like as soon as possible, and I think they gave us a pretty big window, and we took the fight how we wanted to. And normally, like every fight that game, they were taking it on their terms, in my opinion, or the Hera or the Izanami were free casting. And I think in that fight, we were able to shut down both their backliners at once. So that fight definitely went better. But I panicked Aegis right off my ult because I was like, oh god, there's going to be someone on the drop like waiting for me, because every single ult, they were there waiting. And then the one time I just Aegis like immediately on drop expecting to get hit by something, there's nothing there. And I'm like, oh,
no one's
okay.
there for it. A nice little change of pace for you, a little bit of a panic for it. But kind of talking about the Hunters, you give them the ROM game number 1, and then game 2 and 3 decide no more ROM. Was that kind of the point for you guys to say, okay, we just can't give it to him? Or was it just we like this pick a little bit more maybe?
It was more of the second one, I would say. I think Vote is an insane ROM, but with the way their frontline was playing, I needed to play something safe that can't die to Kuzumo Cerberus in 2 seconds. And the Artemis was not good. I don't think I played well that game at all, because I just got W-keyed. I died to too many ganks, and yeah, so basically we just wanted like a safer ADC, something I can go up in the air for a while, help the backline dive, or just slow down my death by about 6 seconds.
Well, it worked out for you, Barrett. Congratulations on your victory today, and good luck in your matchups later down in the week.
Thank you. Love you, J-Mac. Goodbye.
Love you too, Barrett. Bye. Just a nice little bit of fun coming through from Barrett. I like the point that he made. I needed something to where I didn't die in 6 seconds against this front line, and do so he did. Rom, a great god at being able to get out of danger for just a little bit of extra time.
Yeah, I mean, head up in the air, there's your 6 seconds right there, right? Don't even have to worry about the rollout. Who cares about Aegis? The ultimate is the ultimate Aegis, no pun intended. Barracuda, obviously very happy with his performance this time around. That energy was contagious, and I'll pretend that I'm not jealous that you got to say love you to Barra, and I didn't. It's whatever.
No.
I noticed your haircut, Barra. Did J-Mac bring it up? No.
Wow, okay, rude. It's okay. Did you notice Jake's haircut?
Yeah.
Okay, well there you go. You got a little one up on me. Let's look at the schedule more than anything else. Talk about the haircuts. Let's talk about the schedule for the rest of the week looking through. Camelot Kings and Leviathans, a big matchup tomorrow. And the Oni Warriors and the Tartarus Titans. I think that's going to be a big matchup to see tomorrow, especially if the Oni Warriors are playing at the same level they were able to today. Might be a little bit difficult for this Tartarus Titans, even being your Phase 3 playoff champions. And then we got Leviathans and Valkyries on Sunday, and the Tartarus Titans and the Solar Scarabs here in studio. So we've still got a lot of action-packed Smite ahead for you guys. But as far as the rest of the day, Mifflin, that's pretty much it for us here.
No, yeah, that's it. It's not pretty much.
No.
That's it. We're done.
That's true.
Yeah, SPL's over for today.
We still got to say goodbye to the rest of the people at home before then. We got to thank them for being around here and watching this momentous occasion for it. It's the kickoff of Phase 3, week number 1, day number 1, now in the books. A win for the Dragons and a win for the Bolts. But that's not all the SPL we have for you for the week. Come back tomorrow, same time for some more SPL action. Until then, see you later.
Peach it. Now cut to the peach. And peach. There it is.